Naomi Mercer's hands trembled as she dialed her husband's private line, desperate to share the news that would change everything. She was carrying his son. But when another woman answered from inside their home, speaking in a voice she'd known since childhood, Naomi's world didn't just crack, it shattered. That voice belonged to Vanessa, her sister, in their bedroom, answering Lucien's phone. Lucien Mamonspion. In the span of 30 seconds, joy became betrayal, love became poison, and the future she'd imagined turned to ash. What Naomi didn't know was that this moment, this single devastating phone call, was a lie that would steal 6 years of their lives. If you're hooked already, drop a like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's dive in. The doctor's office smelled like antiseptic and false hope. Naomi sat in the waiting room, her phone clutched between both hands, staring at the sealed envelope the nurse had given her 20 minutes ago. Inside was confirmation of what she already knew, what her body had been whispering to her for weeks now, through waves of nausea and bone-deep exhaustion. She was pregnant. Not just pregnant, carrying a son. The ultrasound tech had smiled when she'd asked, had pointed to the screen with professional certainty. See that? Definitely a boy. Congratulations. Naomi had nodded, mute with wonder, barely registering the rest of the appointment. Now she sat alone in a room full of strangers, and the only person she wanted to tell was the one person who should have been sitting beside her. Lucien. Her husband, her everything. The man who'd promised her the world and somehow delivered it, who'd looked at her 3 years ago like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. Lucien Dalcroft, cold to everyone else, but warm for her, dangerous in boardrooms but gentle in their bedroom, the kind of man who built empires during the day and held her through nightmares at night. She needed to hear his voice, needed to share this moment that felt too big to carry alone. Naomi stood, gathered her purse, and walked out into the September sunshine that seemed too bright, too cheerful for the weight of what she was about to reveal. She'd left work early for the appointment, told her assistant she had a personal matter to handle. Lucien didn't know where she was. He'd been in back-to-back meetings all morning, his calendar blocked solid until 3. But this couldn't wait. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to his contact, not the office line that his assistant screened, but his private number. The one he'd programmed into her phone himself, told her was for emergencies or moments when she just needed him, and couldn't wait for the corporate machinery to connect them. "This line is just for you," he'd said, kissing her forehead. "Day or night, Naomi. If you call, I answer." Her thumb hovered over the screen. Part of her wanted to wait, to plan something special, to surprise him over dinner with a tiny pair of shoes or a clever announcement. But the joy bubbling up inside her chest wouldn't be contained. She needed to tell him now, needed to hear his reaction, needed to share this perfect, terrifying, beautiful news. She pressed call. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, someone picked up. "Hello?" A woman's voice, breathless, slightly amused. Naomi's heart stopped. She pulled the phone away from her ear, checked the screen. Lucien's name stared back at her, his private line. The number he'd sworn was just for her. "Hello?" the voice said again, more insistent now. "Who is this?" Naomi knew that voice, had known it her entire life, had heard it across dinner tables and through childhood bedroom walls, had listened to it offer comfort and criticism in equal measure for 28 years. "Vanessa?" The name came out strangled. A pause, then warm and familiar. "Naomi? Oh my God, you scared me. I didn't recognize the number." "Why?" Naomi's throat closed. She forced the words out. "Why are you answering Lucien's phone?" "What? Oh, right." Vanessa laughed, that easy, careless sound she made when nothing really mattered. "He left it on the counter. I heard it ringing and figured it might be important. You know how he is with this thing, always leaving it everywhere." The counter, their counter, in their home. "Where is he?" Naomi asked, and her voice didn't sound like her own anymore. "Oh, he's in the shower. We just got back from the gym and he was completely drenched. You should have seen him, Naomi, absolutely." Naomi hung up. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. Around her, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, cars honking, people walking, someone laughing across the street. The world hadn't noticed that hers had just ended. We just got back from the gym. He's in the shower. Vanessa, in their home, answering his private phone. The phone that was supposed to be just for Naomi, the line he'd promised would always connect them. Her sister's voice had been relaxed, comfortable, like she belonged there, like she'd been there before. Naomi's mind raced backward through the past few months, searching for signs she'd missed. Lucien had been working late more often, coming home exhausted, distracted. She'd attributed it to the new acquisition he was negotiating, the expansion into the European market that consumed his days. He'd apologized for the distance, promised it would ease up soon, kissed her goodnight even when he came to bed at 2 in the morning. And Vanessa, beautiful, charming Vanessa, who'd always had everything come easy, who'd smiled a little too brightly at Lucy during family dinners, who'd started asking pointed questions about his schedule, his habits, his favorite restaurants. "Just want to know my brother-in-law better," she'd said when Naomi had noticed. "He's family now, right?" The envelope in Naomi's purse felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She was pregnant with Lucian's child, with a son he would never meet, because she wouldn't raise a baby with a man who'd brought her sister into their bed. The betrayal was double-edged. Not just her husband, her sister. The two people who should have been sacred, untouchable, safe. Naomi walked. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stand still, couldn't go home, couldn't face either of them. Her phone buzzed in her hand, Lucien calling. She watched it ring, his name flashing on the screen alongside the photo she'd taken last month when they'd gone hiking in the mountains. He was smiling in that picture, genuinely happy, his arm around her waist like she was the most precious thing he'd ever held. What a lie that had been. The call went to voicemail. Immediately, he called again. Naomi turned off her phone. The September sun felt cold now. Everything felt cold. She kept walking, each step carrying her further from the life she'd thought she had, and towards something dark and unknown. Her mind churned with logistics she didn't want to think about but couldn't avoid. Money. Housing. Distance. How far would she need to go to disappear? How completely would she need to erase herself? Because leaving wasn't enough. Lucien Dalcroft didn't accept defeat. He built billion-dollar empires through sheer force of will, negotiated with people who made world leaders nervous, commanded resources that could find anyone, anywhere. If she just left, he'd track her down within days. She needed to vanish. The word felt too dramatic, too extreme. But as Naomi stood on a street corner in downtown Philadelphia, one hand unconsciously moving to rest on her still flat stomach, she knew with absolute certainty that she could not let Lucien find her, could not let him explain or apologize or convince her with that silver tongue that what she'd heard wasn't what it seemed, because it was exactly what it seemed. Vanessa, her sister, in their home, answering his phone, casual and comfortable and completely at ease in a space that should have been sacred. Naomi hailed a cab, gave her home address, then changed her mind halfway through and redirected to a hotel downtown. She checked in under her maiden name, Mercer, not Dalcroft, and paid cash for 3 nights. The room was generic and soulless, but it was anonymous, and right now that was all that mattered. She sat on the edge of the bed and turned her phone back on. 17 missed calls from Lucien, 9 text messages. "Naomi, where are you? Your sister said you called. She's worried." "I'm worried. Please answer your phone." "Whatever Vanessa said, let me explain." "Naomi, this isn't funny." "Where the fuck are you? I'm calling hospitals. If you don't respond in the next hour, I'm calling the police." The last message had come through 6 minutes ago. Naomi's fingers moved across the screen, composing and deleting responses. What could she even say? What words existed for this kind of betrayal? In the end, she sent just one message. "I know. Don't look for me." Then she pulled the battery from her phone. For 3 days, Naomi lived in that hotel room like a ghost. She ordered room service, paid cash, spoke to no one. Her mind ran in circles, alternating between rage and grief and a hollow numbness that scared her more than either emotion. She thought about confronting them, about walking into her own home and demanding answers, about forcing them to look at her while they admitted what they'd done. But every time she imagined it, she saw her sister's face, beautiful, unapologetic Vanessa, who'd always taken what she wanted and never apologized for it. and Lucien, who would probably try to deny it, to spin some story that explained away the damning evidence. We just got back from the gym. He's in the shower. No story could explain that away. On the fourth day, Naomi withdrew the maximum cash advance from her personal account, the one Lucien didn't monitor because he'd always trusted her completely, the same way she'd trusted him. $40,000, which would have been pocket change in their normal life, but now represented survival. She bought a used car from a private seller, paid cash, registered it under her maiden name. She packed a single suitcase with clothes that didn't look like the wife of Lucien Dalcroft would wear. Cheap jeans, oversized sweaters, worn sneakers. She became invisible. The coastal town of Seabrook, Maine, appeared on a map like an afterthought. Population 3,200. No major industry. 3 restaurants, 1 grocery store, a library that doubled as the community center. The kind of place where people moved to escape something, where newcomers were noted but not questioned as long as they kept to themselves. Perfect. Naomi, she'd started thinking of herself as just Naomi again, shedding Dalcroft like a skin that no longer fit, found a small apartment above a bakery. The owner, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and no interest in personal histories, accepted 2 months' rent in cash and didn't ask for references. "You running from something, honey?" the woman asked, but not unkindly. "Someone," Naomi answered, and that was enough. The apartment was tiny, 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, a bathroom with pipes that groaned. But it had a lock on the door and windows that looked out over the ocean. And when Naomi stood in the empty living room with her single suitcase and her terrible secret, she felt something like relief. She could do this. She would do this. For her son. The pregnancy progressed in careful isolation. Naomi found a clinic 2 towns over, paid cash for prenatal care, gave them a fake name and a story about being between insurance coverage. The doctor, a tired woman who'd clearly heard worse lies, accepted it without comment and made sure Naomi and the baby stayed healthy. "You're doing fine," she said during the 20-week appointment. "Baby's strong. Heart rate's perfect. You taking your vitamins?" Naomi nodded. She took the vitamins. She ate well. She walked along the beach every morning, her hand resting on her growing belly, talking to the child she'd never planned to raise alone. "Your father doesn't know about you," she whispered to him, "and he never will. Because your father is a liar who chose my sister over us, and we're better off without him." She said it so many times she almost believed it. Almost. The nights were harder. Alone in the dark, with just the sound of the ocean and her own racing thoughts, Naomi couldn't quite silence the part of her brain that asked questions she didn't want to answer. What if Vanessa had lied? What if there was an explanation? But then she'd remember her sister's voice, comfortable, casual, completely at ease answering Lucien's private phone from their home while he showered. And the questions would die away, replaced by the familiar ache of betrayal. Winter came to Seabrook like a punishment. The ocean turned gray and violent, the wind cut through even the thickest coat, and Naomi's apartment stayed perpetually cold no matter how high she cranked the ancient radiator. She took a job at the library, shelving books, and checking out the few residents who still read physical copies. It paid barely enough to survive, but it was quiet and undemanding, and no one asked questions. "You're new," said Carolyn, the head librarian, on Naomi's first day. "Moved here in October," Naomi replied, which was true enough. "From where?" "South," Naomi said vaguely. "Needed a change." Carolyn looked at her over reading glasses, taking in the obvious pregnancy, the careful way Naomi avoided specifics. Then she nodded. "Well, we're glad to have you. It's mostly quiet here. You'll fit right in." And she did. Naomi became part of Seabrook's invisible population, the people who lived there precisely because it was forgettable. She learned the rhythms of the town, learned which days the grocery store got fresh produce, learned to avoid the diner on Friday nights when the fishermen came in loud and drunk. She learned to be no one. In late February, on a night when the snow fell so thick the world disappeared into white, Naomi's water broke while she was shelving returns. Carolyn drove her to the hospital in the next town over, stayed with her through 12 hours of labor because there was no one else, held her hand when the pain got so bad Naomi thought she might die from it. "You're doing great, honey," Carolyn kept saying. "Almost there, just a little more." And then a cry, sharp and insistent and absolutely furious. "It's a boy," the doctor said, and placed a tiny, screaming, perfect human on Naomi's chest. Elias. She named him Elias, which meant, "The Lord is my God," though she barely believed in anything anymore except the weight of him in her arms and the fierce protective love that flooded through her the moment she saw his face. He looked like Lucien. Same dark hair, same strong features that would probably break hearts someday. But his eyes were hers, gray-blue, searching, already seeming to ask questions she didn't know how to answer. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "Hi, I'm your mom, and I'm going to keep you safe, I promise, no matter what." It was a promise she'd spend the next 6 years keeping. Elias turned out to be easy, as babies went. He slept in reasonable stretches, ate without fuss, smiled early and often. Naomi told herself this was luck, not genetics, refusing to acknowledge that the calm intelligence she saw in her son's eyes might have come from his father. She built their life like a fortress. Every decision was calculated for invisibility. She kept Elias out of group photos at the library's story time. She paid cash for everything. She never posted on social media, never gave her real name to anyone who didn't absolutely need it, never let herself get close enough to anyone that they might ask questions. "You're paranoid," Carolyn said one day, watching Naomi refuse to let Elias participate in the town's 4th of July photo for the local paper. "I'm careful," Naomi corrected. "What are you so afraid of?" Everything. She was afraid of everything. Afraid that one photo, one slip, one moment of carelessness would lead Lucien straight to their door. Afraid that if he found them, he'd take Elias away. Afraid that despite everything, despite the betrayal, despite 6 years of building a life without him, part of her still loved the man she'd married and hated herself for it. "Just want to keep my kids safe," Naomi said finally. Carolyn looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, honey, you do what you need to do." But safety was exhausting. It meant never relaxing, never trusting, never letting her guard down even for a moment. It meant teaching Elias, from the time he could understand, that they were different, special, that they had to be careful in ways other people didn't. "Why can't I be in the picture, Mama?" he asked when he was 4, watching his preschool classmates pose for a holiday card. "Because we're private people," Naomi explained, hating herself for lying to him, but unable to tell the truth. "Some families like to be in photos. We don't. That's just how we are." "Okay," Elias said, accepting it the way children accepted everything from the adults who raised them. But she saw the confusion in his eyes, the first small seed of understanding that they weren't like everyone else. The years accumulated. Seabrook remained forgettable, and Naomi remained invisible, and Elias grew from a baby to a toddler to a small, serious boy who asked thoughtful questions and loved the ocean and sometimes looked at his mother with an expression so much like his father's that Naomi had to turn away. She told herself they were safe, told herself Lucien had stopped looking, told herself that the life she'd built, small and quiet and lonely, was better than the alternative. She told herself a lot of lies, but the truth was always there, waiting. The truth that she'd run without confronting. The truth that she'd made a decision for both of them based on 30 seconds of overheard conversation. The truth that somewhere in Philadelphia, if he was even still there, Lucien Dalcroft had a son he'd never met and didn't know existed. And the truth that 6 years of distance hadn't healed the wound of that phone call, hadn't made the betrayal hurt less, hadn't stopped her from sometimes lying awake at night wondering what if. What if she'd been wrong? But then she'd remember Vanessa's voice. "We just got back from the gym, he's in the shower," and the wondering would stop, crushed under the weight of what she knew she'd heard. Except sometimes, in the darkest part of the night, Naomi would think about the messages Lucien had sent. Whatever Vanessa said, "Let me explain," as if her sister had said something, as if there was more to the story. But what explanation could possibly justify another woman, her sister, answering his private phone from their home while he showered? What possible interpretation of those facts didn't end in betrayal? Naomi never found an answer that satisfied her, so she kept running, kept hiding, kept building walls around herself and Elias that no one could penetrate, until the day someone did. It was a Tuesday in early March, 6 years and 1 week after Naomi had fled Philadelphia. Elias was in first grade, coming home full of stories about his teacher and his friends and the book they were reading about dinosaurs. Naomi was cooking dinner, Spaghetti, Elias's favorite, when someone knocked on the apartment door. This was unusual. No one came to their apartment. The bakery owner occasionally left pastries at the bottom of the stairs, but she never came up. Carolyn had visited once 2 years ago and never asked again. Their life was deliberately, carefully isolated. Naomi wiped her hands on a towel and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive coat that had no place in Seabrook. He wasn't looking at the door but rather at his phone, his face angled down so she couldn't see his features clearly. But she didn't need to see his face. She'd memorized every inch of him during 3 years of marriage, had loved him with every part of herself, had spent 6 years trying to forget the way he moved, the way he stood, the sheer presence he carried like a weapon. Lucien. Her heart stopped, literally stopped, then started again with a painful slam against her ribs. He'd found them. "Mama?" Elias called from the kitchen. "Is someone here?" The man's head snapped up at the sound of the child's voice. Naomi watched through the peephole as Lucien Dalcroft, older now, with new lines around his eyes and a hardness to his jaw that hadn't been there before, stared at her door like it held the answer to every question he'd been asking for 6 years. Then he knocked again, harder this time, more insistent. "Naomi." His voice, deeper than she remembered, rough with something that might have been pain or anger or both. "I know you're in there. I can hear him. Please, open the door." She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 6 years of careful invisibility, destroyed by one moment of carelessness. Had it been the school photo, the library newsletter, a traffic camera? What had she done wrong? "Naomi." Lucien's voice was quieter now, dangerous in its control. "You have 5 seconds to open this door or I'm opening it myself. And we both know I can." He could. Lucien Dalcroft could do anything he wanted. That had always been the problem. "Mama?" Elias appeared in the kitchen doorway, his gray-blue eyes wide and worried. "Who's that man?" The man outside the door went absolutely still. "Mama?" Lucien repeated, his voice cracking on the word. "Naomi, is that... do you have a..." Naomi made a decision, maybe the wrong one. Maybe the one she should have made 6 years ago instead of running. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. Lucien Dalcroft looked at her like she was a ghost, like seeing her standing there, alive and real after 6 years of searching, was more than his mind could process. His eyes were the same, dark, intense, missing nothing, but everything else about him was harder, sharper. Like the years had taken the man she'd loved and forged him into something colder. "Hello, Lucien," she said, and her voice came out steady even though everything inside her was screaming. He opened his mouth, closed it. His gaze moved past her into the apartment, searching for the source of the child's voice. "How old?" he asked roughly. Naomi's hands curled into fists. 6. His birthday? February 22nd. She watched him do the math. Watched the exact moment he realized that 9 months before that February was the May when she'd disappeared. Watched his face go from shock to understanding to something she couldn't quite name. "I have a son," Lucien said, and it wasn't a question. "I have a son," Naomi corrected. "You have nothing." His eyes snapped to hers, and there it was, the fury she'd been expecting. But underneath it, something else. Something that looked almost like grief. "You kept him from me." His voice was lethal. "For 6 years you kept my son from me." "You fucked my sister," Naomi shot back. And finally, the words that had been trapped inside her for 6 years came pouring out. "In our home, in our bed. You betrayed me with Vanessa, and you have the audacity to be angry that I didn't want to raise a child with you, that I didn't want to subject him to a father who... I never touched Vanessa." Lucien stepped forward, filling the doorway with his presence. "Not once. Not ever. And if you had stayed, if you had answered even one of my hundreds of calls, you would know that." Naomi laughed, sharp and bitter. "I heard her, Lucien, answering your phone from our house, talking about the gym and you being in the shower and..." A lie. He pulled out his phone with sharp, controlled movements. "Everything she told you was a lie. I can prove it." I don't want to hear it." "You're going to hear it," Lucien said, and his voice dropped to that tone he used in boardrooms when he was done negotiating and ready to simply take what he wanted. Because you stole 6 years of my son's life based on a 30-second phone call and your sister's manipulation, and you owe me the truth before I decide how to destroy you for it. Mama? Elias's small voice came from behind her. Is that man yelling at you? Lucian's face changed. All the anger drained away, replaced by something raw and exposed. No, baby, Naomi said, not taking her eyes off Lucian. He's not yelling. He's just leaving. I'm not going anywhere, Lucian said quietly. Not until you hear what I have to say. Not until I meet my son. You don't have a son. Naomi. He said her name like a prayer and a curse. Let me prove it. Give me 5 minutes. If I can't prove that I never betrayed you, I'll leave right now and you'll never see me again. But if I can prove it, if I can show you that everything you believed for 6 years was a lie, then you owe me the truth. She should slam the door in his face, should call the police, should do anything except what she was about to do. But she'd been carrying this poison for 6 years, and maybe, she needed to lance the wound even if it killed her. 5 minutes, she said. Then you leave. Lucien's smile was sharp and humorless. 5 minutes is all I need. Naomi stepped back from the doorway, letting Lucien into the cramped apartment that had been her entire world for 6 years. He moved past her carefully, like someone navigating a room full of explosives, his expensive coat and polished shoes absurdly out of place among her secondhand furniture and Elias's scattered toys. Elias stood in the kitchen doorway, small and uncertain, his dinosaur coloring book clutched against his chest. His eyes, so much like Naomi's own, tracked Lucian's every movement with the wariness of a child who'd been taught that strangers were dangerous. Go to your room, baby, Naomi said quietly. But Mama. Now, Elias. The boy's face crumpled slightly, but he obeyed, disappearing down the short hallway. The bedroom door clicked shut with a soft finality that seemed to echo through the small space. Lucian hadn't taken his eyes off the spot where Elias had been standing. He has your eyes, he said, his voice raw. He has nothing to do with you. Naomi crossed her arms, putting her body between Lucien and the hallway like she could physically block him from the child he'd just discovered existed. You said 5 minutes. Start talking. Lucien turned to face her fully, and she saw it then, the damage the years had done. He'd always been hard around the edges, sharp in business, and softer only with her. But this version of him looked like he'd been carved from stone and left out in the rain until all the smooth parts eroded away. His jaw was tighter, his shoulders more rigid, his eyes carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. Good, she thought viciously. Let him hurt the way she'd hurt. The day you disappeared, Lucien began, pulling out his phone. I was in meetings until 2 in the afternoon. I never went to any gym. I never came home early. And I sure as hell wasn't in the shower when Vanessa answered my phone. She said, I know what she said. He was scrolling through his phone now, his fingers moving with controlled precision. I've had 6 years to piece together exactly what she said, exactly when she said it, and exactly how she managed to steal my entire life in one 30-second phone call. He turned the screen toward her. Security footage, time-stamped and dated, September 14th, 6 years ago. The camera showed their home, the house they'd shared in Philadelphia's main line, the one with the gated entrance and the security system Lucien had insisted on. The timestamp read 11:47 a.m. Vanessa's car pulled into the driveway. I was at the office, Lucien said quietly. Confirmed by my assistant, my calendar, and 12 witnesses in the boardroom. Vanessa showed up at the house using the key code you'd given her for emergencies. Naomi watched as her sister got out of the car, looked directly at the camera, and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what they were doing and didn't care who knew it. She went inside, Lucien continued, swiping to the next video. Interior footage now, showing Vanessa walking through their foyer, up the stairs, into their bedroom. She had my phone. I'd left it on the nightstand that morning, something I never did, but I'd been distracted and forgot it. She took it, went into our bathroom, and waited. The next clip showed Vanessa in their bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub, Lucien's phone in her hand. She was scrolling through something, her face intense with concentration. She was reading our messages, Lucien said, and his voice had gone flat, emotionless, like he was reading a report instead of describing the systematic destruction of his marriage. Every text I'd ever sent you, every photo, every private moment we'd shared, she studied them like she was preparing for a test. Naomi felt sick. She'd had intimate conversations on that phone, had sent Lucian pictures meant only for him, had shared thoughts and fears and the kind of vulnerability that only existed between two people who trusted each other completely. Then she called you back. Lucian swiped again. This clip had no video, just audio. A phone log showing an incoming call from Naomi's number at 12:14 p.m. answered, duration 32 seconds. 32 seconds that had destroyed everything. Want to hear the recording? Lucian asked, and there was something dangerous in his tone now. I've listened to it approximately 400 times. I can recite it from memory if you'd prefer. There's a recording. Our home security system backed up all phone calls made from the landline and any connected devices. Standard protocol for executives who deal with sensitive information. Vanessa knew that. She just didn't care. He pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the small apartment. Hello? Hello? Who is this? Then Naomi's own voice, shocked and broken. Vanessa? Why are you answering Lucian's phone? What? Oh, right. He left it on the counter. I heard it ringing and figured it might be important. You know how he is with this thing, always leaving it everywhere. Naomi's past self. Where is he? Oh, he's in the shower. We just got back from the gym and he was completely drenched. You should have seen him, Naomi. Absolutely. The line went dead. Lucian stopped the playback. The silence that followed was suffocating. She lied, Naomi whispered, about everything. Lucien pocketed his phone. There was no gym, no shower. I was in a conference room 40 minutes away, completely unaware that my life was being dismantled by a woman I'd never so much as looked at twice. But she was in our house, in our bathroom, with your phone. Yes, because your sister is a sociopath who spent 3 years watching us be happy together and decided she wanted what you had. Lucien's control was starting to crack now, anger bleeding through the professional veneer. And when she couldn't have it, when I made it clear at that family dinner in August that I found her attention inappropriate and she needed to back off, she decided if she couldn't have me, you couldn't either. Naomi's mind spun backward to August, 6 years ago. There had been a dinner, her parents' anniversary. Vanessa had been unusually quiet that night, sullen almost. Naomi had attributed it to work stress, had tried to draw her sister out with questions about her job, her life. Vanessa had barely responded. She'd left early, claiming a headache. What did you say to her? Naomi asked. The truth, that I was married to the only woman I'd ever loved, that her flirting made me uncomfortable, and if she didn't stop, I'd have to ask you to limit our time with your family. Lucian's jaw worked. She smiled, apologized, said she didn't realize she'd been coming on too strong. I thought that was the end of it. It was the beginning. Yeah. He laughed, sharp and humorless. Apparently telling Vanessa no was the worst thing I could have done. She spent the next month planning how to destroy us, and she did it perfectly. One phone call, 32 seconds. You ran, and I spent 6 years trying to find you. Naomi's legs felt weak. She sat down hard on the threadbare couch, her mind trying to reconcile 6 years of reality with this new information. The messages you sent, after I called. You said whatever Vanessa said, because she told me she'd talk to you. Came to my office that afternoon, crying, saying you'd called and sounded upset and hung up on her. Said she was worried about you, that you'd seemed strange lately, distant. I believed her. His voice turned bitter. I actually believed her. Drove home immediately, found my phone right where she said it would be, on the bathroom counter, and tried calling you, over and over. When you finally texted back, I know, don't look for me, I didn't understand what you knew, what you thought you knew. I thought you'd slept with her. I know. It took me 3 weeks to figure out what Vanessa had done. By then you were gone. Bank accounts cleaned out, car sold, no credit card trail, no phone activity, nothing. You disappeared like you'd never existed. Lucian's hands curled into fists. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Thinking you'd just left without explanation, without giving me a chance to defend myself? You want to talk about pain? Naomi's voice rose, all the grief and rage she'd been suppressing flooding out. I was pregnant, Lucian. Pregnant and alone and terrified because I thought my husband had betrayed me with my own sister. I had no one. No money after the first few months, no support. I gave birth in a hospital where no one knew my real name, and the only person holding my hand was a librarian who felt sorry for me. You could have told me, his voice cracked, about the pregnancy, about our son. Even if you believed I'd cheated, you should have told me about him. Why? So you could take him away? So you could use your money and your power and your army of lawyers to declare me an unfit mother and steal my child? She was standing now, getting in his face the way she never would have dared 6 years ago. I know what you're capable of, Lucian. I've seen you destroy people for less than what you thought I'd done. You think I was going to hand you that kind of ammunition? He's my son. He's mine, Naomi shouted back. I'm the one who carried him, who raised him, who stayed up with him through fevers and nightmares, who taught him to read and tie his shoes and be kind to other people. Me. Not you. You're just the DNA. Lucian's face went white. For a moment she thought he might hit something, the wall, the furniture, something to release the fury radiating off him. But he just stood there, shaking with the effort of holding himself together. I want to meet him, he said finally. Properly. Absolutely not. Naomi, you don't get to walk in here after 6 years and demand access to my son because you have some security footage in a victim complex. He doesn't know you. He doesn't need you. We've been fine without you. Have you? Lucian looked around the apartment with deliberate slowness, taking in the peeling paint, the ancient appliances, the toys that were clearly secondhand. This is fine? Living in a one-bedroom apartment above a bakery in a town so small it doesn't have a traffic light? Working in a library for what, minimum wage? Raising my son in poverty because you were too proud to… Get out! No. I said get out! Naomi's voice was shrill now, panic overtaking anger. You got your 5 minutes. You showed me your evidence. Congratulations, you were innocent. That doesn't change anything. Elias is my son, and you have no rights here. Actually, Lucian said quietly, dangerously, I have every right. He's my biological child. You kept him from me illegally. I could take you to court right now, have him removed from your custody, and there's not a damn thing you could do to stop me. The words hit like physical blows. Naomi felt her breath leave her body, felt the world tilt and narrow to just Lucian's face and the terrible truth of what he was saying. He could do it. He absolutely could. You wouldn't, but her voice was weak. Wouldn't I? Lucian stepped closer. You took 6 years from me, Naomi. 6 years of my son's life that I can never get back. First steps, first words, birthdays, Christmas mornings, all of it, stolen because you believed a lie and ran instead of fighting for us. You think I'm going to just walk away now? You think I'm going to let you keep him from me for another 6 years? He doesn't know you. Taking him would traumatize him. Then don't make me take him. Let me meet him. Let me be part of his life. The fury in Lucian's voice shifted, became something else. Something that might have been desperation if she didn't know better. I'm not here to destroy you, Naomi. I'm here because I've spent 6 years searching for the woman I loved, and I finally found her. And I found out I have a son. A son who should have been mine from the beginning. You don't love me anymore, Naomi said it flatly. Whatever we had died 6 years ago. You don't get to decide what I feel. And you don't get to show up and demand a family reunion like nothing happened. They stared at each other, 6 years of pain and anger and grief creating a chasm between them that felt impossible to cross. Naomi's heart was hammering so hard she felt dizzy. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Lucian was supposed to stay lost. Her secret was supposed to stay buried. The life she'd built was supposed to remain intact. But secrets never stayed buried. Not really. They just waited underground until someone dug deep enough to find them. Mama? Elias's small voice came from the hallway. Can I come out now? Naomi closed her eyes. Stay in your room, baby. But I'm hungry, and you were yelling. I know, I'm sorry. Just give Mama a few more minutes, okay? Silence. Then quietly, is that man my daddy? The question hung in the air like smoke. Naomi opened her eyes and found Lucian staring at the hallway, his expression unreadable. "We don't have a daddy," Naomi called back, her voice remarkably steady considering her entire world was collapsing. "Go play with your dinosaurs. I'll make you a snack in a minute." "Okay," Elias said, sounding uncertain. The bedroom door closed again. "You told him he doesn't have a father." Lucian's voice was lethal. "He doesn't. He has me." "You selfish." Lucian cut himself off, dragging a hand through his hair in a gesture she remembered from their marriage, when he was trying not to lose his temper completely. "Do you have any idea what you've done to him? Growing up without a father, thinking he's not wanted? He knows he's wanted. I want him. I chose him. That's more than a lot of kids get." "It's not enough." "It's been enough for 6 years." Lucian turned away from her, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled. Too controlled. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm staying in Seabrook. There's a bed and breakfast on Main Street. I've already checked in. Tomorrow, you're going to tell Elias that his father has been looking for him and that his father would very much like to meet him. You're going to facilitate that meeting, and then we're going to figure out custody arrangements." "No." "It's not a negotiation, Naomi. Everything with you is a negotiation. That's all you know how to do. Threaten and manipulate until people give you what you want." She was shaking now, fury and fear warring inside her. "I won't let you do that to Elias. I'm his father." "You're a stranger who shares his DNA. There's a difference." Lucian spun back to face her, and she saw it then, actual pain breaking through the anger. "Then let me be more than that. Let me know him. Let me—" His voice cracked. "I've lost 6 years, Naomi. Don't make me lose the rest of his childhood, too." And there it was. The thing she'd been avoiding seeing since he'd walked through her door. Lucian Dalcroft, the man who terrified boardrooms and bent industries to his will, was begging. "One meeting," she heard herself say. "Supervised, here, tomorrow after school, 30 minutes. And if he's scared or uncomfortable at all, you leave immediately. An hour, 45 minutes. Fine." Lucian pulled out his phone, checking something. "What time does school end?" 3:15. But he takes the bus home, so he's usually here by 3:30. "I'll be here at 3:30? He moved toward the door, then stopped. "The security footage I showed you? That's just the beginning. I have 6 years of evidence proving Vanessa orchestrated everything. Phone records showing she called you from my phone. Bank records showing she withdrew money from your joint account to make it look like you'd cleaned it out yourself. Witness statements from people she told conflicting stories to. I've built a case that would destroy her in court. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. All of it. Not just what I showed you in 5 minutes." He looked at her, and his eyes held something she couldn't quite name. "Vanessa didn't just ruin our marriage, Naomi. She enjoyed doing it. And when I confronted her 3 weeks after you disappeared, when I finally figured out what she'd done, she laughed. Said you were too trusting, too easy to manipulate. Said if you'd really loved me, you would have stayed and fought." The words felt like acid. "Where is she now?" "I don't know. I don't care. I made it clear that if I ever saw her again, I'd make sure she never worked in this city or any city for the rest of her life. She disappeared, probably changed her name like you did." Lucian's smile was cold. "Cowards seem to run in your family. Get out. Tomorrow. 3:30. He opened the door, paused in the threshold. "And Naomi? If you run again, I will find you, and next time, I won't be asking for supervised visits. Next time I'll bring lawyers and police and court orders, and I will take my son. So don't run." He left, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. Naomi stood frozen in her living room, surrounded by the life she'd built on lies and half-truths, and the belief that she'd been protecting her son from a monster. Except Lucian wasn't the monster. He was the victim. They both were. And Vanessa, beautiful, charming, beloved Vanessa, who their mother had always preferred, who could talk her way out of anything, who smiled like sunshine and lied like breathing. She was the one who'd destroyed them. "Mama?" Elias emerged from his room, his dinosaur book still clutched to his chest. "Is the man gone?" "Yes, baby. He's gone." "Was that my daddy?" Naomi looked at her son, small and serious, and so much like the man who'd just walked out her door. She'd always known this moment would come eventually, had practiced what she'd say, how she'd explain. But all her careful planning evaporated in the face of Elias's gray-blue eyes, so full of hope and fear and questions she didn't know how to answer. "Come here," she said, sitting on the couch and patting the space beside her. Elias climbed up, tucking himself against her side the way he always did when he needed comfort. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble. But we need to talk about something important." She took a breath. "That man who was here, his name is Lucien, and he is your father." "Really?" Elias's face lit up with such pure joy that Naomi's heart cracked. "I have a daddy." "You've always had a daddy. He didn't know where we were, but he found us, and he wants to meet you." "When?" "Tomorrow, after school. He's going to come here and you two can talk." "What should I call him?" The question was so innocent, so hopeful, that Naomi had to fight to keep her voice steady. "What do you want to call him?" Elias thought about this with the seriousness he brought to everything. "Can I call him Daddy, or is that weird because I don't know him?" "You can call him whatever feels right to you, baby." "Okay." Elias snuggled closer. "Mama, why didn't Daddy know where we were?" This was it. The moment where Naomi either told the truth or committed to a lie that would define the rest of their lives. She thought about what Lucien had said, that she'd made Elias believe he wasn't wanted, that he'd grown up thinking his father had abandoned them. She thought about Vanessa laughing when Lucien confronted her, said if you'd really loved me, you would have stayed and fought. Maybe her sister had been right. Maybe running had been the coward's choice. "It's complicated," Naomi said finally. "There was a misunderstanding, a big one, and because of it, Daddy and I were apart for a long time. But he's been looking for us, for you, and now he's found us, and we have to figure out what happens next." "Does he want to be my daddy?" "Very much." "Good." Elias yawned, the day's drama finally catching up to him. "I always wanted a daddy. Tommy at school has a daddy, and they go fishing. Do you think my daddy likes fishing?" Naomi had no idea. There was so much about Lucien she didn't know anymore. 6 years had passed. He might have changed completely. The man who'd stood in her living room today had been harder than the one she'd married, colder. But underneath it, she'd seen glimpses of the Lucien she remembered, the one who'd held her through nightmares and kissed her awake on lazy Sunday mornings and looked at her like she was the center of his universe. That Lucien was gone. She'd made sure of it when she'd run. "I don't know if he likes fishing," Naomi admitted, "but you can ask him tomorrow." "Okay." Elias was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mama, are you sad?" "A little bit, yeah." "Is it because of Daddy?" "It's because of a lot of things, sweetheart. Grown-up things that are hard to explain." "Will you and Daddy be together now, like Tommy's parents?" The question pierced through her. "I don't know. Probably not." "Why not?" "Because sometimes people make mistakes, and those mistakes can't be fixed, even when you want them to be." Elias processed this with the gravity of someone much older than 6. "Did you make a mistake, Mama?" "Yes," she thought. "I made a terrible, unforgivable mistake. I believed a lie instead of the man I loved. I ran instead of fighting. I kept your father from you because I was hurt and scared and too proud to admit I might have been wrong." "Yes," she said out loud. "I made a mistake." "Can you say sorry?" "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "You always tell me to say sorry when I mess up." "Because sorry doesn't give him back 6 years," Naomi thought. "Sorry doesn't fix what I broke. Sorry doesn't undo the damage." "You're right," she said instead. "I should say sorry. And I will. Tomorrow." "Good." Elias yawned again. "I'm tired, Mama." "I know, baby. Let's get you ready for bed." She went through the familiar nighttime routine on autopilot. Teeth brushing, pajamas, story time. Elias picked his favorite book about a dinosaur who felt different from all the other dinosaurs until he found his family. The irony wasn't lost on Naomi. When Elias finally fell asleep, his small body curled around his stuffed Brachiosaurus, Naomi stood in his doorway and watched him breathe. This was what she'd been protecting, this peaceful, safe existence, where the worst thing that happened was a scraped knee at recess or a disagreement over which vegetables to eat at dinner. But safety built on lies wasn't really safety at all. It was just a prettier prison. She walked back to the living room and sat in the dark, looking out at the street below where Lucien had disappeared. Tomorrow he'd be back. Tomorrow she'd have to watch him meet Elias for the first time, watch her son's face light up at the presence of the father he'd always wanted, watch the first threads of a relationship form that would inevitably change everything, and she'd have to figure out how to live with the knowledge that she'd stolen 6 years from both of them. Her phone, a prepaid cell she used sparingly, sat on the coffee table. She picked it up, stared at the blank screen, and made a decision she'd been avoiding for 6 years. She called her mother. The phone rang 4 times before Helen Mercer answered, her voice cautious. "Hello? Mom, it's me." Silence. Then, shocked. "Naomi? Oh my God. Naomi, where have you been? We've been so worried. Your father and I have been... Is Vanessa there?" Naomi cut through the flood of questions. "What? No, she... Naomi, where are you? Are you safe? Please tell me you're... Where is Vanessa?" Her mother's voice changed, became defensive. "I don't know. She moved to California about 5 years ago. We talk sometimes, but... Why are you asking about your sister? Naomi, what's going on?" 5 years ago. Right around the time Lucien would have confronted her, would have threatened to destroy her career. Vanessa had run too. Of course she had. "Did she ever tell you why I left?" Naomi asked. She said you and Lucien were having problems, that he'd been unfaithful and you couldn't handle it. But Naomi, if you'd just come home, we could have helped you through it. Your father and I... Lucien wasn't unfaithful. Vanessa lied. What? No, that's not... Vanessa wouldn't... Vanessa staged the whole thing, Mom. She manipulated me into believing Lucien had cheated, and when I ran, she... Naomi's voice broke. She destroyed my marriage because she wanted him for herself. That's absurd. Your sister would never... She did. Naomi laughed, sharp and bitter. And you know what the worst part is? I believe it, because Vanessa has always taken what she wanted, and you've always let her, your golden child who could do no wrong. Naomi Marie Mercer, I will not listen to you slander your sister. I have a son, Naomi said flatly. Your grandson. He's 6 years old. His name is Elias. And you've never met him because I've been hiding from Lucien for 6 years, living in poverty and fear, all because I believed Vanessa's lies. Her mother went silent. Lucien found us today, Naomi continued, and he showed me proof, video footage, phone records, everything. Vanessa planned it all. She stole his phone, answered my call, lied about where he was and what he was doing. She destroyed my life for fun. That can't be. Ask her yourself, if you can find her. Because apparently she's been running too. Naomi stood, pacing the small living room. I called to tell you that I'm alive, that I have a son, and that whatever relationship we might have had died the day Vanessa answered Lucien's phone and you believed her version of events without question. Naomi, please. We didn't know. If we'd known, you would have what? Chosen me over her? Don't insult me, Mom. Vanessa has always been your favorite. We both know it. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is that I lost 6 years with the man I loved because my sister is a sociopath and my family never questioned her story. Naomi's hands were shaking. I have to go. Tomorrow Lucien meets his son for the first time, and I need to figure out how to explain to a 6-year-old that his mother is a liar who kept him from his father. Naomi, wait. She hung up. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Naomi sat back down on the couch, pulled her knees to her chest, and finally let herself cry. 6 years of holding it together, of being strong for Elias, of pretending the pain didn't exist, came pouring out in ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for the marriage she'd lost, for the years she'd stolen, for the man she'd loved and destroyed, for the sister who'd betrayed her, and the parents who'd believed that betrayal without question, for her son, who'd grown up without a father because his mother had been too broken to see the truth, and underneath it all, she cried for herself. For the woman she'd been 6 years ago, happy, trusting, full of hope. That Naomi was gone. She'd died in a doctor's office parking lot on a September afternoon, murdered by 32 seconds of perfectly executed lies. What was left was this: a hollow shell living in a tiny apartment, working a dead-end job, raising a child in isolation because she'd been too afraid to face the possibility that she'd been wrong. Vanessa had been right about one thing. If Naomi had really loved Lucian, she would have stayed and fought. But she hadn't. She'd run. And tomorrow, she'd have to start paying for that choice. Naomi didn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling while her mind replayed every moment of the past 6 years, examining each decision through the new lens of truth. Every choice she'd made, running, hiding, keeping Elias from his father, had been built on Vanessa's lies. And she'd never questioned it. Not once. By the time dawn broke over Seabrook, painting the ocean in shades of gray and pink, Naomi had cried herself dry. She got up, made coffee with shaking hands, and tried to figure out how to tell a 6-year-old that his entire world was about to change. Elias bounced into the kitchen at 7, full of energy and questions. "Is today the day I meet Daddy? After school, remember?" Naomi poured cereal into his bowl, grateful for the routine of it. "He's coming at 3:30. What if he doesn't like me?" The question hit her in the chest. "Baby, he's gonna love you. You're amazing. How could he not? Tommy's friend Marcus has a dad who left because he didn't want kids. What if my dad is like that?" Naomi knelt down so she was eye level with her son. "Your dad has been looking for us for 6 years. That's how much he wants to know you. He's not going to leave. Promise?" She couldn't promise that, couldn't promise anything about what Lucien would or wouldn't do. But she could see the hope in Elias's eyes, the desperate need for reassurance, and she couldn't crush it. "I promise he wants to be here," she said carefully. "And I promise I'll make sure you're okay no matter what happens." Elias seemed satisfied with that. He ate his breakfast, chattering about school and his upcoming field trip to the aquarium and whether dinosaurs could have lived in the ocean. Naomi listened with half her attention, the other half counting down the hours until Lucien walked back through her door. The school day dragged. Naomi went to work at the library, but she couldn't focus. She misshelved books, forgot to check returns properly, and nearly snapped at old Mrs. Henderson when she complained about late fees for the 3rd time that week. "You all right, honey?" Carolyn asked during their lunch break. "You seem off." "Just tired." Naomi pushed her sandwich around her plate without eating it. "Didn't sleep well. This have anything to do with that fancy car I saw parked outside your building yesterday?" Of course Carolyn had noticed. In Seabrook, everyone noticed everything. It was part of what had made it safe. Strangers stood out, but it also meant privacy was a fantasy. "Old friend?" Naomi said vaguely. "From before." "Uh-huh." Carolyn didn't look convinced. "This old friend planning to stick around?" "I don't know." "You want him to?" The question was too complicated to answer honestly. Did she want Lucy in Seabrook? In her life? In Elias's life? Want didn't cover the tangled mess of emotions she felt when she thought about him. Fear, anger, grief, and underneath it all, buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed, love. Or the memory of love. Or maybe just the ghost of what they'd had before Vanessa had destroyed it. "Doesn't matter what I want," Naomi said finally. "He's Elias's father. I don't get to decide if he sticks around." Carolyn was quiet for a moment, studying her with those sharp librarian eyes that missed nothing. "You know, in 6 years, you've never once mentioned Elias's father. Not his name, not where he is, nothing. I figured he was either dead or dangerous. He's neither. Then why'd you run from him?" Naomi looked up, meeting Carolyn's gaze. The older woman had been kind to her, had given her a job and respect, and never pushed for answers she didn't want to give. She deserved something closer to the truth. "I thought he'd betrayed me," Naomi said quietly. "I thought he'd been unfaithful, and I was pregnant, and I couldn't stay. So I ran. And it turns out I was wrong. He never betrayed me. Someone else lied, and I believed them, and I took his son away for 6 years because of it." Carolyn let out a low whistle. "That's a hell of a mistake." "Yeah. What are you going to do now?" "I have no idea." At 2:30, Naomi left work early, claiming a headache that wasn't entirely a lie. Her head was pounding, her stomach twisted in knots, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She walked the 3 blocks home, climbed the stairs to her apartment, and spent 15 minutes cleaning things that were already clean just to have something to do with her hands. At 3:15, she stationed herself by the window, watching for the school bus. It arrived at 3:28, right on schedule. Elias jumped off, his backpack bouncing. his face bright with excitement. He waved goodbye to the bus driver and ran toward the bakery entrance. Naomi met him at the door. "Hey, baby. Good day? Is he here yet?" Elias craned his neck, looking past her like Lucian might be hiding in the stairwell. "Not yet. Go put your backpack away and wash your hands." Elias obeyed, moving faster than she'd ever seen him move for a simple task. He was back in the living room in under 2 minutes, his hair combed with wet fingers, his shirt tucked in crookedly. "Do I look okay?" he asked anxiously. Naomi's heart broke a little. "You look perfect." At exactly 3:30, someone knocked on the door. Elias's eyes went wide. "That's him?" "Remember what we talked about?" Naomi said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Be polite. If you're scared or uncomfortable, tell me and we'll make him leave, okay?" "Okay." But Elias didn't look scared. He looked eager, hopeful, like Christmas and his birthday had come at once. Naomi opened the door. Lucien stood in the hallway holding a wrapped box and looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. He'd changed clothes since yesterday, designer suit replaced with dark jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Naomi made in a month, but at least didn't scream wealth. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. "Hi," he said, and his voice was rough. "Hi." Naomi stepped back. "Come in." Lucien walked into the apartment, his eyes immediately finding Elias. The boy stood in the middle of the living room, small and uncertain, staring at his father with the same intensity Lucien was staring at him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. They just looked at each other, taking in features and expressions and the reality of each other's existence. Then Elias said, very seriously, "You're tall." Lucian's face cracked into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't been so broken. "Yeah, I am. You might be tall too when you grow up." "Really?" "Maybe. Your mom's not short." Lucian's gaze flicked to Naomi, then back to Elias. I brought you something. Is that okay?" Elias looked at Naomi for permission. She nodded. "Okay," Elias said cautiously. Lucian crossed the room slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal that might spook. He knelt down so he was closer to Elias's height and held out the wrapped box. "I didn't know what you liked, so I guessed. If it's wrong, we can exchange it." Elias took the box carefully, turning it over in his hands. The wrapping was professional, perfect corners and expensive paper. Nothing like the birthday presents Naomi wrapped in newspaper comics because gift wrap was an unnecessary expense. "Can I open it?" Elias asked. "Of course." Elias tore into the paper with the enthusiasm of a 6-year-old, revealing a box that made his eyes go huge. No way. No way. Inside was a high-end dinosaur model kit, the kind with realistic details and movable parts that Naomi could never afford. The picture on the box showed a Tyrannosaurus Rex in mid-roar, every scale and tooth rendered in perfect detail. "You like dinosaurs," Lucian said. It wasn't a question. "I saw the books in your room yesterday." "I love dinosaurs." Elias clutched the box to his chest. "This is the best present ever. Look, Mama, look." Naomi looked. The price tag was still on the bottom of the box. $89 for a toy. She'd spent less than that on Elias's last 3 birthdays combined. "It's very nice," she managed. "What do you say?" "Thank you." Elias beamed up at Lucien. "Can we build it now?" "If your mom says it's okay." Both of them looked at Naomi, and she realized this was how it was going to be from now on. Every decision filtered through the reality of Lucien's presence, his rights, his desire to be involved. 30 minutes, she said. "Then Daddy and I need to talk." The word felt strange in her mouth. Daddy. She hadn't called Lucien that since the pregnancy test, since those brief, shining hours when she'd believed their future was secure. Lucien's eyes darkened at the word, but he just nodded and followed Elias to the coffee table. Within minutes, they had the box open, and pieces spread everywhere. Elias chattering a mile a minute about different dinosaur species, while Lucien listened with an attention he'd probably never given any business deal. Naomi retreated to the kitchen, giving them space but staying close enough to intervene if needed. She made herself busy wiping already clean counters and organizing cabinets that didn't need organizing, stealing glances at the pair in her living room. Lucien was good with him, patient. When Elias struggled with the small pieces, encouraging when he got frustrated, genuinely engaged in a conversation about whether pterodactyls were actually dinosaurs or just flying reptiles. He didn't talk down to Elias, didn't treat him like a child who needed simple words. He talked to him like a person. And Elias was glowing. His whole face was lit up in a way Naomi had never seen before, eager and happy, and so desperate for this man's approval that it physically hurt to watch. "This part goes here, see?" Lucian pointed to a connection point. "You've got good hands for this. Steady." "Mama says I'm good at puzzles," Elias said proudly. "Does she?" Lucian glanced toward the kitchen, catching Naomi's eye for just a second. "Your mama's pretty smart. If she says you're good at something, it's probably true. Are you good at puzzles?" "Not really. I'm better with numbers." "I like numbers too. Miss Peterson says I'm the best at math in my class." "Yeah?" Lucian's voice held unmistakable pride. "That's great, Elias. Really great." They worked together for the full 30 minutes, building the dinosaur's skeleton piece by careful piece. When Naomi finally said time was up, Elias actually groaned. "But we're not done yet." "You can finish it later," Naomi said firmly. "Right now, Daddy and I need to have a grown-up conversation." "Can Daddy come back tomorrow?" The question hung in the air. Lucienne looked at Naomi, waiting for her answer, and she saw the warning in his eyes. If she said no, if she tried to limit his access, they both knew what would happen. Lawyers, courts, a custody battle she'd lose. "We'll see," she said, which was the best she could manage. Elias's face fell. "That means no." "It means we'll see," Naomi repeated. "Go to your room for a bit, okay? Take your dinosaur. You can work on it in there." Elias gathered up the pieces carefully, shooting Lucienne a look that was pure longing. "Will you help me finish it? If you come back?" "Absolutely," Lucian said, and his voice was thick. "I promise." "Okay." Elias carried his treasure toward his bedroom, then turned back at the door. "Daddy, I'm really glad you found us." Lucian's composure cracked. "Me too, kid. Me too." When Elias's door closed, the apartment fell into heavy silence. Naomi stayed in the kitchen, gripping the counter for support. Lucienne remained on the floor by the coffee table, staring at the spot where his son had been. "He's perfect," Lucienne said finally, his voice raw. "Smart and sweet and everything I didn't know I was missing." "I know." 6 years, Naomi. He stood, moving toward her with controlled fury. 6 years of moments like that, first words, first steps. Teaching him to read, watching him learn. You stole all of it from me. I thought I was protecting him. From what? A father who would have loved him? Who would have given him everything? Lucian's hands were clenched at his sides. You saw how happy he was just now. That's what you kept from him. The chance to have a father who showed up. You weren't exactly innocent in all this, Naomi shot back. If you'd paid more attention to Vanessa's behavior, if you'd been more careful. Don't you dare. Lucian's voice was lethal. Don't you dare put this on me. I told your sister to back off. I made my boundaries clear. What was I supposed to do? Get a restraining order against my wife's family member because she flirted too much? You're the one who believed a 30-second phone call over 3 years of marriage. You're the one who ran instead of confronting me. You're the one who decided, all by yourself, that our son didn't deserve to know his father. I was pregnant and terrified. And I was desperate and destroyed. Do you know what it's like to have someone you love just vanish? To wake up every morning not knowing if they're alive or dead? To blame yourself because you can't figure out what you did wrong? Lucian was shouting now, all pretense of control gone. I hired investigators, posted rewards, checked morgues and hospitals and shelters. I turned my entire life upside down looking for you, and you were just hiding, raising my son, teaching him that he didn't have a father. He has a father now, Naomi shouted back. You're here. Isn't that what you wanted? What I wanted was to be there from the beginning. What I wanted was to hold my son when he was born, to walk him to his first day of school, to teach him to ride a bike and tie his shoes, and Lucian's voice broke. What I wanted was the life you stole from me. The words hit like physical blows. Naomi felt tears streaming down her face, but she couldn't stop them anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. You're right. About all of it. I made a terrible mistake and I can't fix it. and I don't know how to make this right. You can't make it right. That's the point. Lucian dragged his hands through his hair. Those years are gone. I can't get them back. The best I can do is be here now and hope it's enough. What do you want from me? Honestly, I want to rewind 6 years and make you stay. Make you confront me instead of running. Make you trust me enough to question what you thought you heard. He looked at her and his eyes were red. But I can't do that. So what I want now is to be part of Elias's life. Real part, not supervised visits and scheduled appointments. I want to know my son. For how long? A week, a month, until the novelty wears off and you go back to Philadelphia and your empire? I'm not leaving. Lucian said it flatly. I've spent 6 years building a company I don't give a damn about, filling the void you left with work and money and meaningless acquisitions. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm staying in Seabrook, or wherever you are, until Elias knows me, until he trusts me, until I've earned the right to be called his father. Naomi stared at him. You can't just uproot your entire life. Watch me. I have people who can run the company. I have technology that lets me work from anywhere. And I have a son who's more important than any of it. Lucian pulled out his phone, showed her something. I already signed a 6-month lease on a house here. 3 bedrooms, because I'm hoping, eventually, Elias might want to stay over. It's on the other side of town, far enough that I'm not hovering, close enough that I can be here in 5 minutes if he needs me. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also serious. I'm not losing any more time with him. And me? The question came out smaller than she'd intended. What happens with us? Lucian looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. Anger and hurt and something else. Something that looked dangerously close to the way he used to look at her. I don't know, he said finally. Part of me hates you for what you did. Part of me understands why you did it, even if I don't agree. And part of me... He stopped, shaking his head. It doesn't matter. We're not the same people we were 6 years ago. You made sure of that. The accusation stung because it was true. They were strangers now, bound only by the child in the other room and the ghost of what they'd once had. So what now? Naomi asked. Now we figure out co-parenting, custody arrangements, a schedule that works for everyone. You mean a schedule you approve of? I mean a schedule where I get to actually be a father. Lucian's jaw was tight. I'm not trying to take him from you, Naomi. Despite what you did, you're still his mother. He loves you, needs you. I'm not going to disrupt that, but I need you to make space for me in his life. Real space. Not these scraps you're throwing me to avoid a legal fight. Fine. Naomi's whole body felt heavy. What do you want? Every other weekend? Wednesdays? I want every day I can get. I want to pick him up from school, take him to dinner, help with homework. I want normal things that normal fathers get to do. You're not a normal father. Normal fathers don't just appear after 6 years. No, normal fathers aren't kept from their children by mothers who believed lies and ran away. Lucian's voice was sharp. We're both going to have to deal with abnormal here, Naomi. Question is whether we do it fighting or whether we try to make this work for Elias's sake. She wanted to fight. Wanted to scream at him that he couldn't just walk in and demand a place in their lives, that she'd built something here without him, and he had no right to dismantle it. But when she thought about Elias's face as he'd built that dinosaur model, the pure joy of having his father's attention, she knew fighting would only hurt her son. Okay, she said quietly. We'll make it work. For Elias. For Elias, Lucian agreed. They stood in the kitchen, 2 people who'd once known each other completely and now couldn't bridge the gap between them, and tried to figure out how to share a child without destroying each other in the process. A knock on the door shattered the moment. Naomi frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. You want me to get it? Lucian was already moving, protective instincts kicking in even though he had no right to them anymore. No, But he was already at the door, looking through the peephole. His entire body went rigid. Lucienne, who is it? He turned to face her, and his expression was murderous. You need to keep Elias in his room, right now. What? Why? Who's out there? Vanessa. The name hit Naomi like a freight train. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the fact that the sister she hadn't seen or spoken to in 6 years was standing outside her door. The knock came again, more insistent. Then a voice, familiar and cheerful and utterly unwelcome. Naomi, I know you're in there. Mom told me you called. We need to talk. Lucien's hands curled into fists. Stay here. I'll handle this. No. Naomi found her voice, found her spine. She's my sister. This is my apartment. I'll handle it. Naomi, I said I'll handle it. She moved to the door, her whole body shaking with rage and adrenaline. 6 years of running, 6 years of hiding, 6 years of living with the consequences of what Vanessa had done. It ended now. Naomi yanked open the door. Vanessa stood in the hallway looking exactly like she always had, beautiful, polished, perfect. She'd cut her hair shorter, wore clothes that screamed California money, but her face was the same. The face Naomi had trusted her entire life. The face that had smiled while destroying everything. Oh my God, Naomi. Vanessa moved forward like she was going to hug her. I've been so worried about you. When Mom said you'd called, I flew out immediately. We need to talk about… Get out! Naomi's voice was cold, dead. Get out of my building, out of my town, and out of my life. Vanessa's eyes widened with practiced innocence. What? Naomi, I don't understand. I'm here to help you. To explain what really happened with Lucien, and I know what happened. Naomi stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her so Elias wouldn't hear. I know exactly what you did. The phone call, the lies, all of it. For just a second, Vanessa's mask slipped. Naomi saw calculation flash across her sister's face, saw her weighing options and strategies. Then the mask was back, and Vanessa was shaking her head with concern. Naomi, whatever Lucien told you, you can't believe him. He's manipulative. He always has been. That's why I tried to warn you. Don't! Lucien appeared in the doorway behind Naomi. Don't you dare stand there and lie to her face, not after what you did. Vanessa's eyes locked on Lucien, and something hungry flashed in them. Lucien, I didn't know you'd be here. This is a family matter. I'm the father of Naomi's child. That makes it my matter. Lucien's voice was lethal. And you need to leave. Now. You have a child? Vanessa's shock seemed genuine. She looked at Naomi, and for a moment something like hurt crossed her face. You had a baby, our parents' grandchild, and you never told us. Why would I? Naomi laughed, sharp and bitter. So you could destroy that too? So you could steal him from me the way you tried to steal everything else? I never tried to steal anything. I was trying to protect you from a man who didn't deserve you. You were trying to have him for yourself, Naomi shot back. And when he rejected you, when he made it clear he'd never want you, you decided to burn it all down. That's not… I didn't… Vanessa was losing her composure now, her perfect facade cracking. You don't understand what it was like, watching you have everything, the perfect husband, the perfect life. Do you know how it felt to be the sister who could never measure up? So you destroyed me? Naomi's voice rose. Because you were jealous? Because you couldn't stand seeing me happy? I was in love with him, Vanessa shouted, and there it was, the truth, raw and ugly. I loved him first. I saw him first at that charity gala before you ever met. I was going to introduce myself, but then you walked up and started talking to him, and he looked at you like you were the only person in the room. And I had to watch you fall in love, get married, build a life with the man I wanted. So, yes, I did something about it, and I'm not sorry. The admission hung in the air like poison. Lucien stepped forward, his face carved from ice. You destroyed a marriage, kept a father from his son for 6 years, and ruined 2 people's lives because you had a crush on someone who never looked at you twice? That's what this was about? It wasn't a crush? Vanessa's composure was completely gone now. I loved you, and you didn't even see me. You only ever saw her. Perfect Naomi with her perfect life and her perfect marriage, and get out. Lucien's voice was quiet, dangerous. Get out before I call the police and have you arrested for stalking, harassment, and fraud. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. 6 years of evidence, Vanessa. Phone records, security footage, bank transactions, witness statements. I've spent 6 years building a case against you, and the only reason I haven't destroyed you yet is because you weren't worth the effort. But if you don't leave right now, I will end you. Your career, your reputation, your entire life. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what you did. Vanessa looked at him, then at Naomi, and something desperate crept into her expression. Naomi, please, I'm your sister. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but family... You're not my family, Naomi said, and the words felt like freedom. You're a stranger who happens to share my DNA, and I never want to see you again. Mama? Elias's small voice came from inside the apartment. What's going on? Who's yelling? Vanessa's eyes widened. Is that... Can I meet him? Please, Naomi, he's my nephew. I just want to... No. Naomi stepped between Vanessa and the door. You don't get to meet him. You don't get to be part of his life. You gave up that right when you destroyed mine. Please, leave, Lucian said again. Now, or I make the call. Vanessa looked between them, saw the wall they'd formed, and finally, seemed to understand that she'd lost. She took a step back, then another, her perfect facade completely shattered. You'll regret this, she said, but her voice was weak. The only thing I regret, Naomi said quietly, is believing you in the first place. Vanessa turned and walked away, her expensive shoes clicking against the stairs. They watched until she was gone, until her car pulled away from the curb and disappeared down Main Street. Then Naomi's legs gave out. Lucian caught her before she hit the floor, his arms coming around her in a gesture so familiar it hurt. For a moment, just a moment, Naomi let herself lean into him, let herself remember what it felt like to have someone else carry the weight. Then she pulled away. I need to check on Elias, she said, her voice unsteady. Naomi, not now, Lucian, please, just not now. She went inside, leaving him standing in the doorway, and found her son sitting on his bed with his dinosaur pieces scattered around him. Who is that lady? Elias asked, his eyes too old for his age. No one important, Naomi said, and pulled him into a hug. No one important at all. But Elias wasn't convinced. He pulled back from the hug, studying Naomi's face with the unsettling perception children sometimes had. You're crying again. I'm okay, baby. Was that lady mean to you? Naomi wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. It's complicated. She's someone I used to know, and we're not friends anymore. Because she was bad? The question was so simple, so direct. Naomi thought about lying, about softening it, but she was tired of lies. They'd caused enough damage. Yes, she said. Because she was bad. Elias seemed to accept this. He picked up one of the dinosaur pieces, turning it over in his small hands. Is Daddy still here? Naomi looked toward the living room. Lucienne stood framed in the doorway, watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. He's still here. Can he help me finish the dinosaur now, since the mean lady is gone? Naomi glanced at Lucienne. He nodded once, and she saw the exhaustion in his face that probably matched her own. Vanessa's appearance had drained them both. Yeah, Naomi said. He can help. Lucian came into the bedroom, settling on the floor beside Elias's bed, while the boy climbed down with his pieces. Within minutes, they were back to work, Elias's earlier anxiety forgotten in the simple pleasure of building something with his father. Naomi watched from the doorway for a moment, then retreated to the kitchen. She needed coffee, or something stronger, but settled for water and the mindless task of washing dishes that were already clean. Her hands were still shaking. Vanessa had been here, in Seabrook, had tracked her down the same way Lucienne had, probably using the same phone call to their mother as a starting point. The thought made Naomi's skin crawl. How long had Vanessa known where she was? Had she been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike? She's not coming back. Naomi turned. Lucienne stood in the kitchen entrance, his sleeves rolled up, looking more rumpled than she'd ever seen him during their marriage. How do you know? Naomi asked. Because I made it clear what would happen if she did. And Vanessa might be a lot of things, but she's not stupid. She knows I meant every word. She said she loved you. The words tasted bitter. All this time I thought she did it to hurt me, but she actually believed. It doesn't matter what she believed. Lucian's voice was hard. Love doesn't justify destruction. It doesn't excuse what she did to us, to Elias. She saw you first, at that gala. I don't even remember her being there. Lucienne dragged a hand through his hair. The only person I remember from that night is you,
wearing that blue dress and trying to hide behind a column because you didn't want to be there. Despite everything, Naomi felt a small smile tug at her lips. I hated those events. I know.
You told me within 5 minutes of meeting me, said charity galas were performative nonsense for rich people who wanted tax write-offs. And you said I was probably right, but the food was decent. It was decent. The company turned out to be better. Lucien's expression softened slightly. I knew within 10 minutes of talking to you that I wanted to know everything about you. Within a month, I knew I was going to marry you. Vanessa could have stood there naked and I wouldn't have noticed. There was only ever you. The words hung between them, heavy with the weight of what they'd lost.
That was a long time ago, Naomi said quietly. We're different people now. Are we? Lucien stepped closer. Or are we just the same people with more scars? I don't know what we are anymore. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know how to do this. Co-parent with someone who's essentially a stranger. Someone I used to love, but now I just what? I don't know if I even know you anymore. 6 years is a long time. You could be anyone. So could you. His voice wasn't accusatory, just tired. The Naomi I married wouldn't have run. She would have fought. She would have trusted that what we had was strong enough to survive one phone call. The Naomi you married was naive. She thought love was enough.
She didn't understand that people could lie that convincingly, that family could betray you that completely. So Vanessa broke more than just our marriage. She broke your ability to trust anyone. It wasn't a question, but Naomi answered anyway. Yes. Even me? Especially you. She met his eyes. Because you're the one who could hurt me most. You and Elias. And I've spent 6 years making sure no one ever gets that kind of power over me again. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. I'm not trying to hurt you, Naomi. I know you don't believe that, but it's true. I'm trying to be a father to our son, that's all. Is it? Because earlier you threatened to take him from me. I was angry. You just admitted to keeping my son from me for 6 years based on a lie. I said things I shouldn't have, but you meant them. Part of me did, yeah. Part of me wanted to hurt you the way you'd hurt me. But I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to use Elias as a weapon. He's already been damaged enough by our mistakes. My mistakes? Naomi corrected. Let's be clear. This is on me. It's on both of us. I should have handled Vanessa differently, should have documented her behavior, told you explicitly what was happening, should have been more careful. Lucien's jaw tightened. And it's on Vanessa for being a psychopath. But mostly, it's on a situation that got out of control and destroyed everything we'd built. From the bedroom came Elias's voice, triumphant. I got it! Daddy, look, I got the head on. That's great, buddy, Lucien called back. Then, quieter, to Naomi. He called me Daddy. He's been calling you that since yesterday. He's wanted a father his whole life. You showed up and filled that hole. Of course he's attached. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. Naomi rubbed her temples. Everything's happening so fast. Yesterday, my biggest worry was whether the library's heating would make it through winter. Today, I'm dealing with you, Vanessa, and the complete destruction of the life I'd built. I need time to process. We don't have time. Elias needs stability. He needs to know what's happening, what the plan is. The plan is you leave and let me think. The plan is I stay in Seabrook and we figure this out together. Lucien's voice was firm. I told you. I'm not going anywhere. I leased a house. I'm working remotely. I'm here. For how long? A month? 2? Until you get bored of small-town life and realize you miss your penthouse and your power lunches? For as long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Lucien moved closer, and Naomi found herself backed against the counter. I know you don't trust me. I know you think I'm going to disappear or turn into someone you can't stand, but I'm asking you to give me a chance. Let me prove I'm serious about being in Elias's life. Let me show you I'm not the enemy here. You're not the enemy. You're just... What? Terrifying. The word came out before she could stop it. You're terrifying because you have the power to take everything from me. My son, my peace, my carefully constructed safety. You could destroy all of it with one phone call to a lawyer. I won't. You say that now, but what happens when we disagree?
What happens when I make a parenting choice you don't like? Or when Elias wants to do something I say no to and you say yes? What happens when the novelty wears off and you remember that I'm the person who stole 6 years from you? Lucian's expression turned grim. Then we'll fight, we'll argue, we'll probably say things we regret. But we'll do it like adults who share a child, not like enemies trying to destroy each other. That's what co-parenting is. I've never had to co-parent before. I've just been a parent. Then we'll figure it out together, set boundaries, make rules. Put Elias first instead of our own hurt feelings. He paused. Unless you think you can't do that. Unless you think you'll use him as a weapon to punish me. I would never. Wouldn't you? You already kept him from me for 6 years. Who's to say you won't try it again if things get hard? The accusation stung because there was truth in it. Naomi had proven she was capable of making drastic decisions when she felt threatened. What was to stop her from doing it again? I won't run, she said quietly. Not again. I can't do that to Elias. He deserves better. He deserves both his parents. I know. The admission felt like defeat. I know he does. From the bedroom, Elias called out, Mama, Daddy, come see, the dinosaur is done. They both turned toward the sound of his voice, eager, happy, completely unaware of the tension in the kitchen. Lucien looked at Naomi, and she saw the question in his eyes. Could they do this? Could they put aside 6 years of pain and betrayal and be what Elias needed? She didn't know. But she nodded anyway, and they walked to the bedroom together. Elias stood beside his bed, holding up the completed dinosaur model with pride radiating from every inch of his small body. The T-Rex was impressive, its jaws open in a permanent roar, every detail exactly as pictured on the box. We did it, Elias announced. Me and Daddy built it together. It looks amazing, baby, Naomi said, and meant it. Can I show Tommy tomorrow at school, please? It's pretty big to carry on the bus. I'll drive him, Lucian offered. If that's okay with you, I could pick him up after school too. Give you a break from the library. Naomi's first instinct was to refuse. But Elias was looking at her with such hope, and she'd already taken so much from him. What was one car ride? Okay, she said, but straight to school and straight home. No detours. Understood. Lucian crouched down to Elias's level. Hey, buddy, I have to go now, but I'll be here tomorrow morning to take you to school. That sound good? Elias's face fell. You have to go? Just for tonight, but I'll be back, I promise. Where do you live? I have a house on the other side of town. Maybe this weekend you could come see it, if your mom says it's okay. Both of them looked at Naomi again. She felt the weight of the decision, the symbolism of allowing Elias into Lucien's space. It felt too fast, too soon. But Lucien's eyes were steady, patient, waiting for her to make the call. We'll see how the week goes, she said carefully. Maybe Saturday. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Lucian seemed to understand the compromise. He nodded, then did something that made Naomi's breath catch. He pulled Elias into a hug. I'm really glad I found you, Lucien said quietly. Really glad. Elias hugged him back fiercely. Me too, Daddy. When Lucien finally left, the apartment felt emptier than it had in years. Elias chattered through dinner about dinosaurs and school and all the things he wanted to show his father, but Naomi barely heard him. Her mind was stuck on the image of Lucien hugging their son, the naked emotion on his face, the reality that this was just the beginning. After she tucked Elias into bed, a process that took longer than usual because he wanted to talk about every detail of meeting his father, Naomi finally allowed herself to collapse on the couch. The day had been brutal. Vanessa's appearance, the confrontation, the admission of her sister's twisted logic. And underneath it all, the growing realization that Lucien wasn't going away. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. It's me, Lucien's voice came through. I wanted to make sure you were okay. After Vanessa. How did you get this number? You gave it to the school for emergency contacts. It's listed on Elias's file. Of course it was. Naomi rubbed her eyes. I'm fine. You're lying. What do you want me to say? That seeing my sister destroyed me? That finding out she did all of this because of some delusional crush makes me feel sick? That I don't know how to process any of this? Yeah, that's exactly what I want you to say, because it's the truth. And we've had enough lies. Naomi was quiet for a moment. She really loved you. She loved the idea of me. There's a difference. She didn't know me, didn't want to know me. She just wanted what you had. She said she saw you first. I don't care if she saw me first, last, or from Mars. I chose you. I married you. I built a life with you. Her feelings were her problem, not mine. And definitely not yours. But if I'd known, if you'd told me she was being inappropriate, you would have what? Cut her out of your life? Confronted her? She's your sister, Naomi. You loved her. I didn't want to be the reason you lost family. Instead, she was the reason I lost you. No. You lost me because you believed her instead of me. That's on both of us. Her for lying, and you for running instead of fighting. The words hurt because they were true. Naomi had always prided herself on being strong, independent, capable, but when it mattered most, she'd folded. She'd let fear win. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. Maybe we don't fix it. Maybe we just move forward. Is that possible, after everything? I don't know, but I'm willing to try. For Elias. A pause. And maybe for us too. Eventually. The yes hung in the air, dangerous and tempting. Naomi wanted to dismiss it, to say there was no US anymore, that they were just two people bound by a child and nothing more, but she couldn't quite make herself say it. One day at a time, she said instead. One day at a time, Lucian agreed. Get some sleep, Naomi. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. He hung up before she could respond. Naomi sat in the dark, her phone still pressed to her ear, and tried to remember when her life had last felt simple. Before Lucian. Before Vanessa's betrayal. Before she'd become someone who ran instead of fought. She couldn't remember. Maybe it had never been simple. Maybe she'd just been better at pretending. The next morning came too early. Elias was up at 6, bouncing with energy, asking every 5 minutes when Daddy would arrive. Naomi made breakfast and coffee and tried to tamp down her own anxiety about the day ahead. Lucian knocked at exactly 7:30. He was dressed more casually than yesterday, jeans and a button-down instead of the sweater, but he still looked expensive, out of place in her shabby apartment. Morning, he said when she opened the door. Morning. He's been ready since 6. I heard that. Lucian smiled, and Naomi saw Elias peek around her leg. Hey, buddy. Ready for school? Can I bring the dinosaur? Absolutely, go grab it. Elias ran to get his backpack and the model, leaving Naomi and Lucian in awkward silence. About last night, Lucian started. Don't, it's fine. I meant what I said, about trying. I know. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself. This is weird. All of it. You being here, playing father, acting like we're a normal family. We're not normal, but we're what we've got. Lucian's voice was gentle. And Elias deserves our best effort, even if it's messy. Everything about this is messy. Yeah, but we'll figure it out. Elias returned, struggling with his backpack and the dinosaur. Lucien took the model, tucking it carefully under one arm, while Elias shrugged into his backpack. Say goodbye to your mom, Lucian prompted. Elias hugged Naomi tight. Bye, Mama. Love you. Love you too, baby. Be good at school. I will. He grabbed Lucian's free hand with complete trust, and something in Naomi's chest cracked at the sight. She watched from the window as Lucian loaded Elias into a car that was absolutely too expensive for Seabrook, some sleek black SUV that probably cost more than most people's houses. He buckled Elias in carefully, double-checking the straps before closing the door and walking around to the driver's side. Before he got in, he looked up at her window. Their eyes met across the distance, and Naomi saw something in his expression that looked almost like hope. Then they were gone, and she was alone in the apartment that suddenly felt too quiet. The day dragged. Naomi went to work, but she couldn't focus. Carolyn noticed, of course she noticed, but mercifully didn't push. At lunch, Naomi's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dropped him off safely. Teacher seemed impressed with the dinosaur. He says his friends think it's cool. Naomi stared at the message, then saved the number under Lucien's name. a small concession to the new reality of her life. "Thank you," she texted back. 3 dots appeared immediately, like he'd been waiting for her response. "Picking him up at 3:15. We'll have him home by 4. We might stop for ice cream if that's okay." Ice cream, such a normal father-son thing to do. Naomi's throat tightened. "Okay, nothing too sugary? He'll be bouncing off walls." Noted. The afternoon passed in a haze. At 3:30, right when Elias would normally be getting off the bus, Naomi's phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, Elias grinning with chocolate ice cream on his face, Lucian beside him looking more relaxed than she'd seen him since he'd arrived in Seabrook. The caption read, "Sorry." He insisted on chocolate, lesson learned for next time. Despite everything, Naomi smiled. They arrived home at 4:15, Elias talking a mile a minute about school and his friend's reactions to the dinosaur and how Daddy had let him order a double scoop even though Mama said no sugar. "I said nothing too sugary," Naomi corrected, raising an eyebrow at Lucien. "Double scoop doesn't qualify." "My mistake," Lucian said, not looking remotely apologetic. "Won't happen again." "Yes, it will," Elias said matter-of-factly. "You said we could go again on Friday." "Did I?" Lucian's eyes met Naomi's, and she saw the question there. Was this okay? Was he overstepping? Honestly, Naomi didn't know. But Elias was happy, and that had to count for something. "Friday's fine," she said. "But just 1 scoop." "Deal." Lucian ruffled Elias's hair. "All right, buddy. I've got some work to do, but I'll see you tomorrow morning, okay?" "You're leaving again?" Elias's face fell. "Just for a few hours. But tomorrow we'll have the whole morning together. And this weekend, if your mom says yes, maybe you can come see my house." Elias turned pleading eyes on Naomi. "Can I? Please?" She looked at Lucien, trying to read his intentions, but his face was carefully neutral, leaving the decision entirely to her. "Saturday," she said finally. "For a few hours. I'll come with you." She saw the flicker of disappointment in Lucien's eyes. He'd probably hoped for solo time, but he just nodded. "Saturday works." After he left, Elias peppered Naomi with questions about Lucien's house, what it looked like, whether it had a yard, if there would be more dinosaurs. She answered what she could and deflected the rest, all while her mind spun with the implications of what she'd just agreed to. She was letting Lucien into their lives, really letting him in, not just supervised visits and carefully controlled interactions. And once that door opened, there would be no closing it again. The week followed a pattern. Lucien arrived every morning at 7:30 to drive Elias to school. He picked him up at 3:15 and they spent an hour together, sometimes at the park, sometimes getting ice cream despite Naomi's protests, once at the library where Elias proudly showed off his father to Carolyn. Then Lucien would drop him home, exchange a few words with Naomi, and leave. It was civilized, almost cordial, and it was killing Naomi because every interaction reminded her of what they'd lost. On Friday night, after Lucien left, Naomi's phone rang. Her mother this time. "I heard about Vanessa," Helen said without preamble. "She called me from the airport, said you and Lucien ambushed her. We confronted her about destroying my marriage, if that's what you mean." "She's devastated, Naomi. She made a mistake." "A mistake?" Naomi's voice rose. "Mom, she orchestrated a 6-year deception. She stole Lucien's phone, lied to my face, and destroyed my family because she had a crush. That's not a mistake. That's calculated cruelty. She was in love. She was obsessed. There's a difference." Naomi paced her small living room. "And you know what the worst part is? You're calling to defend her, not to apologize for believing her lies, not to ask about your grandson, but to make excuses for why she did what she did. That's not fair. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. It was easier to believe that Lucien was the villain and I was the dramatic one who overreacted. Easier than accepting that your perfect daughter is capable of that level of manipulation." Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "You have a son." "Yes." "I'd like to meet him." "No." "Naomi, you chose Vanessa over me every time it mattered, Mom. Every single time. I'm not giving you the chance to do it with Elias. He's my grandson. He's my son, and I get to decide who's in his life. You lost that privilege when you believed Vanessa's version of events without question." Your father wants to see him too. That hurt worse. Her father had always been quieter, gentler, but he'd never stood up to Helen, never challenged her favoritism, and that silence had been its own kind of betrayal. Maybe someday, Naomi said, but not now. Not until I can trust that you won't poison him against me the way you tried to poison me against Lucien. You did. Every time you suggested I'd overreacted, every time you defended Vanessa, every time you made me feel like I was the problem. Naomi's voice cracked. I needed you, and you weren't there, so now I don't need you anymore. She hung up before her mother could respond. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, threatening rain. Elias was up early again, bouncing with excitement about seeing Daddy's house. Naomi dressed carefully, not too nice, but not her usual frayed jeans either. Something that said she wasn't trying to impress, but also wasn't completely broken. Lucien arrived at 10, driving the same expensive SUV. Elias bolted out the door before Naomi could stop him, throwing himself at his father with unrestrained joy. Easy, buddy, Lucien laughed, catching him. You ready to see the house? So ready. Is it big? Does it have stairs? Can I have my own room there? The last question made both adults freeze. Lucien's eyes found Naomi's asking permission to answer. Let's just visit first, Naomi said carefully. See how it goes. The drive across town took 15 minutes. Seabrook wasn't big enough for anything to take longer. Lucien's house was on the north side, near the marina. The expensive side, where summer people kept vacation homes and locals saved for years to afford property. The house itself was beautiful in an understated way. 2 stories, gray shingles, white trim, a yard that actually had grass instead of weeds. Nothing ostentatious, but clearly expensive. Wow, Elias breathed as they pulled into the driveway. It's just a house, Lucien said, but Naomi heard the uncertainty in his voice, like he was worried he'd made a mistake, chosen something too nice, created too stark a contrast with her cramped apartment. He had. But she couldn't say that. Inside was worse. The house was furnished, not fully, but enough to be livable. Modern furniture, a kitchen with appliances that actually worked, windows that didn't let in drafts. It was everything Naomi's apartment wasn't. There's 3 bedrooms, Lucien said, addressing Naomi while Elias ran through the rooms. Master's upstairs, 2 bedrooms down here. I thought, if you were okay with it, one could be Elias's, for when he visits. When, not if. Naomi felt the walls closing in. Can I see? Elias called from the hallway. Sure, buddy. It's the one on the right. Naomi followed her son, dreading what she'd find. But the room was tasteful. Twin bed, simple dresser, blue walls. No explosion of toys or desperate attempt to buy affection. Just a space, waiting. On the dresser sat one item, a framed photo. Naomi picked it up, her throat tightening. It was from their wedding. Her in her white dress, Lucien in his tux, both of them laughing at something someone had said. They looked impossibly young, impossibly happy. I have about 100 copies of our wedding photos, Lucien said from the doorway. This one's my favorite. You were laughing because my best man had just made a terrible speech, and I was laughing because you were laughing, and everything felt perfect, Naomi finished. Everything felt perfect. Yeah. They stood there, looking at the photo of 2 people who didn't exist anymore, while Elias bounced on the bed behind them, testing its springs. Why'd you put this here? Naomi asked quietly. In his room? Because he should know we weren't always broken, that there was a time when we loved each other enough to build a life together, that he wasn't born from nothing. Lucien's voice was rough, and because I wanted to remember it too. Before I get too angry about what we lost, Naomi set the photo down carefully. I'm sorry for all of it. I know I keep saying that, but I don't know what else to say. You could say you'll give this a real chance, not just going through the motions because you're scared I'll take him to court, but actually trying to make this work. This? Co-parenting, being in each other's lives, letting Elias have both of us without the constant tension. Lucien moved closer. I'm not asking you to forgive me for whatever you think I did. I'm asking you to try. For him. I am trying. Are you? Or are you just counting down the days until I get bored and leave? The accusation stung because it was partially true. Part of Naomi was waiting for Lucian to realize Seabrook was too small, fatherhood was too hard, and she was too damaged, waiting for him to give up so she could go back to the safety of being alone. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I've been alone for so long. Been just me and Elias. I don't know how to share him. Then learn. Because I'm not going anywhere, and the sooner you accept that, the easier this gets. Mama, Daddy, come see the backyard. Elias's voice interrupted whatever Naomi might have said. They followed him outside, where he was already exploring, looking for bugs, climbing the one tree, finding sticks that could be swords or fishing poles or whatever his imagination decided. Lucien stood beside Naomi on the porch, and for a moment they just watched their son play. He's amazing, Lucien said quietly. I know. You did a good job, raising him alone. He's kind and smart and curious. That's all you. The compliment landed awkwardly. He would have been those things with you too. Maybe, but he wouldn't have had to be so careful, wouldn't have learned to stay invisible. Lucian's jaw tightened. He told me yesterday that he's not allowed to be in pictures, that you taught him to hide. Naomi felt the accusation behind the words. I was protecting him. From what? His father who was desperately searching for him? Or from the possibility that life could be bigger than a one-bedroom apartment and a library job? That's not fair. None of this is fair, but we're here now and we have to deal with it. Lucien turned to face her fully. I want him to have sleepovers here. I want to take him places. I want to be an actual father, not just the guy who shows up for an hour after school. He's 6. He's not ready for sleepovers. Or you're not ready. Maybe both. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself. This is happening too fast. You've been in our lives for less than a week, and you're already talking about custody arrangements and separate bedrooms and being a father. That's what I'm talking about. Being a real present father in my son's life. At what cost? He's comfortable with me. He's happy. What if introducing all this change hurts him more than it helps? Lucien's expression hardened. What if keeping him from his father hurts him more? What if in 10 years he finds out you had the chance to let me be part of his life, and you chose not to because it made you uncomfortable? The words hit like a slap, because underneath the anger they held truth. Elias deserved his father, and Naomi's discomfort, however justified, couldn't be the deciding factor. One sleepover, she heard herself say. A trial run. If he's scared or uncomfortable, we stop. Lucien's whole body relaxed. Okay, when? Not yet. Give it another few weeks. Let him get used to you first. 2 weeks, then he stays over. 3. Deal. Lucien held out his hand like they were sealing a business contract. Naomi looked at his hand, remembering all the times they'd shaken hands playfully during their marriage, sealing bets, making promises, pretending formality when really they just wanted to touch each other. This was different. This was real negotiation. Two people who didn't trust each other trying to build something functional from the ruins of what they'd lost. She took his hand. His grip was firm, familiar in ways that hurt. 3 weeks, she confirmed. They stood there, hands clasped, while Elias played in the yard and the rain that had been threatening all morning finally began to fall. The rain came down harder, forcing them inside. Elias protested until Lucien suggested they could build a fort out of couch cushions, and suddenly the weather didn't matter anymore. Naomi watched from the kitchen while father and son constructed an elaborate structure involving blankets, chairs, and engineering that probably violated several laws of physics. Mama, come in, Elias called from inside the fort. There's room! Naomi hesitated. The fort looked precarious at best, and crawling into a confined space with Lucien felt dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with structural integrity. I'm good out here, baby. Please? Elias's face appeared in the entrance, all hope and pleading. We made it big enough for 3. She couldn't say no to that face. She'd never been able to. Naomi crawled into the fort, immediately regretting it. The space was smaller than it looked, forcing her shoulder against Lucien's as they both tried to give Elias room in the middle. The proximity was suffocating. She could smell his cologne, different from what he'd worn during their marriage, but still expensive, still distinctly him. This is the best fort ever, Elias declared, oblivious to the tension.
Can we eat lunch in here?
Sure, Lucian said. What do you like? I've got sandwich stuff, or we could order pizza. Pizza. Elias's eyes lit up. With pepperoni. You got it.
Lucien pulled out his phone, started placing an order, and Naomi felt the world tilting again. This casual domesticity, pizza in a blanket fort, her son laughing, Lucien looking more relaxed than he had all week. It felt too much like the life they should have had, the life she'd thrown away. You okay? Lucien asked quietly while Elias rearranged pillows. Fine. You're lying again. What do you want me to say? That this is hard. That watching you be a good father makes me feel guilty for keeping you from him? That every moment in this house reminds me of what we lost? Yeah, that's exactly what I want you to say. Lucian's voice was low, meant only for her. Because at least it's honest. Honesty hasn't exactly served me well. Neither have lies. Fair point. Naomi looked at Elias, who was now explaining to an imaginary dinosaur why forts were superior to caves. He really likes you. I really like him. Lucian's expression softened. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I didn't even know he existed until a week ago. How messed up is that? Pretty messed up. Your fault. I know. They sat in uncomfortable silence until the pizza arrived. Lucien crawled out to get it, returning with a box that was too large for the fort. They ended up eating in the living room, Elias sitting between them on the floor, chattering between bites about school and his friends, and whether dinosaurs would have liked pizza. Probably not, Lucien said seriously. Their digestive systems weren't designed for processed cheese. But what if it was a really smart dinosaur, like a velociraptor? Even smart dinosaurs have biological limitations. Naomi watched them debate dinosaur nutrition with the same intensity Lucien probably brought to board meetings, and something in her chest cracked open. This was what Elias had been missing. Not money or big houses or expensive toys, though those didn't hurt, but this. Someone who took his questions seriously, who engaged with his interests, who showed up. She'd tried to be everything for him, but she'd never been this. Could never be this because she wasn't his father. After lunch, Elias started fading. The excitement of the morning, combined with the full stomach, made his eyes droop. Lucien noticed before Naomi did. You tired, buddy? No, Elias said, yawning. Want to watch a movie? I've got a couch that's pretty comfortable. Okay, but I'm not tired. 5 minutes into the movie, some animated thing about talking cars, Elias was asleep, his head on Lucian's lap. Lucian's hand rested on the boy's shoulder, protective and gentle, and Naomi had to look away from the intimacy of it. He does this, she said quietly. Fight sleep until he crashes. Gets that from you. You used to do the same thing. Used to? Do you still? Naomi considered lying, then remembered what Lucien had said about honesty. Yeah, I still do that. Some things don't change. Some things do. Lucien was quiet for a moment, his eyes on their sleeping son. Do you remember when we used to talk about having kids? You wanted 3? I wanted 2. We compromised on 2.5. That was a joke. Was it? Because I meant it. I would have given you whatever you wanted. His voice was rough. Still would, if you'd let me. Lucien, I know, too fast, too much. But I spent 6 years wondering if you were alive, Naomi. 6 years of worst-case scenarios and sleepless nights and blaming myself for whatever I'd done to make you leave. And now you're here, and he's here, and I'm supposed to just... What? Pretend it's fine? Pretend I don't still feel... He stopped himself, but Naomi heard what he didn't say. Feel something. For her. Still. Don't, she whispered. Please don't go there. Why not? Because it's not fair to either of us. We're not those people anymore. So you keep saying, but I look at you and I see the woman I married. Older, yeah. More careful. But still you. You're wrong. That woman died 6 years ago when she heard her sister's voice on your phone. What's left is just broken pieces trying to hold it together for Elias. Lucian's eyes were too intense, seeing too much. Then maybe we're both broken. And maybe broken pieces can still fit together if you're willing to try. Or maybe they just cut each other worse. Naomi, I need to go.
She stood abruptly. He's asleep. I should let him rest here. Let you have time with him. I'll come back in a few hours. You don't have to leave. Yes, I do. Because staying meant having conversations she wasn't ready for, feeling things she'd buried for good reasons, risking the fragile peace they'd built. Lucien studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Text me when you're on your way back. I'll make sure he's awake. Naomi grabbed her coat, paused at the door. Lucien had shifted Elias so the boy's head rested more comfortably, had draped a blanket over him with the care of someone who'd been waiting years for this simple privilege. The sight made her throat tight. You're good with him, she said. I'm trying. It shows. She left before he could respond, stepping out into rain that had gentled to a drizzle. The walk back to her apartment took 30 minutes, long enough for her to question every decision she'd made in the past week. Letting Lucien in. Agreeing to sleepovers, allowing herself to remember what they'd had. Her apartment felt emptier than usual without Elias's energy filling it. Naomi made tea she didn't drink, picked up toys that were already organized, and tried not to think about Lucien's words. Maybe broken pieces can still fit together. No. That way led to more pain. She'd barely survived losing him the first time. She wouldn't give anyone, that kind of power over her again. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Lucien, Elias still asleep, now drooling slightly on a pillow. The caption read, "He snores." Did you know that? Despite everything, Naomi smiled. Yes, like a tiny chainsaw. It's actually kind of endearing. Wait until you hear it at 2 a.m. when he's had a nightmare and crawled into your bed. Looking forward to it. The words sat on her screen, heavy with implication. Looking forward to midnight wake-ups, to the mundane struggles of parenting, to all the small moments she'd experienced alone for 6 years. He meant it. Lucien actually wanted those things. Naomi set her phone down and let herself cry. Not the angry, bitter tears from earlier in the week, but something quieter. Grief for what they'd lost, yes, but also something that felt dangerously close to hope. 3 hours later, she walked back to Lucien's house. The rain had stopped, leaving everything wet and clean. Lucien answered the door looking rumpled, his hair sticking up like Elias had been using him as a jungle gym. He's awake, Lucien said, and he has approximately 1,000,000 questions about whether he can come back tomorrow. What did you tell him? That we'd figure it out. Didn't want to promise anything without checking with you first. The consideration surprised her. He can come back. If he wants. If you want. I want. Lucien stepped aside to let her in. Naomi, about what I said earlier. Mama! Elias ran up, saving her from whatever Lucien was about to say. Daddy said I can have a sleepover in 3 weeks. Is that true? That's the plan. Yes! Elias pumped his fist. Tommy's going to be so jealous. He only gets to see his dad every other weekend. The casual statement hit Naomi like a truck. Every other weekend. She'd been so focused on her own feelings, her own fear, that she'd almost created exactly that scenario. The one where Elias only saw his father on a schedule, where custody was a battle instead of a partnership. Actually, she heard herself say, Daddy can see you whenever he wants. As long as it works with school and bedtime and all that. We'll figure out a schedule, but yeah, whenever. Both Lucien and Elias stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Really? Elias asked. Really? Can he come to my school thing on Friday? We're doing presentations about our families. Naomi's stomach dropped. The family presentation. She'd forgotten about it in the chaos of the week. Baby, that's in 5 days. The permission slips were due. I can handle it, Lucien said. If you want me there? If that's okay with you. She looked at Elias's hopeful face, at Lucien's careful expression, and made another decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. Okay, you should be there. You're his father. The smile that broke across Lucien's face was worth every ounce of discomfort. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that was strange but functional. Lucien took Elias to school most mornings. Naomi picked him up 2 days a week, Lucien the other 3. They had dinner together twice, awkward, stilted affairs where they focused on Elias and avoided looking at each other too long.
Lucienne attended the school presentation where Elias proudly introduced my dad to his classmates and teacher with such joy that Naomi had to excuse herself to cry in the bathroom. On the surface, they were managing, co-parenting like adults, putting Elias first. Underneath, Naomi was drowning. Every interaction with Lucienne reminded her of what they'd had. Every smile he gave Elias, every patient explanation, every moment of casual competence made her remember why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. And the way he looked at her sometimes, like he was seeing the woman he'd married instead of the one who'd run, made her want things she had no right to want. 3 weeks after Lucienne had found them, on the night before Elias's first sleepover, Naomi stood in her apartment packing her son's overnight bag and tried not to have a panic attack. "It's one night," she muttered to herself. "He'll be fine. Lucienne's responsible. The house is safe. Nothing bad will happen." But her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely fold Elias's pajamas. A knock on the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Lucienne wasn't picking up Elias until tomorrow after school. Naomi looked through the peephole and saw Carolyn standing in the hallway holding what looked like a casserole dish. "I know you're home," Carolyn called. "I can see your shadow. Let me in before this gets cold." Naomi opened the door. "What's this?" "Comfort food. You look like you need it." Carolyn pushed past her into the apartment, setting the dish on the counter. "Chicken and dumplings. My grandmother's recipe. Fixes most things." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar. You've been walking around like a ghost for 3 weeks, ever since that man showed up." Carolyn settled onto the couch without invitation. "Talk." "There's nothing to talk about." "He's the father, isn't he? The one you ran from?" Naomi considered denying it, but Carolyn had earned honesty. She'd been there when Elias was born, had given Naomi a job and respect and space to heal. "Yeah, that's him. He seems decent, good with the boy." "He is." But nothing. We're co-parenting. It's fine." "Uh-huh. And that's why you look like you're about to shatter, because everything's fine?" Naomi sat down heavily. "I don't know what I'm doing, Carolyn. I don't know how to do this. Share Elias with someone I used to love but can't trust. Someone who's been nothing but patient and kind and exactly what Elias needs, which makes me feel guilty and angry. Am I still in love with him?" The question landed like a bomb. "No," Naomi said automatically. "Still lying. I can't be in love with him. Too much has happened. Too much damage." "Honey, the heart doesn't care about logic. You can love someone and not trust them. You can want something and know it's a bad idea. Doesn't make the feelings less real." "So what am I supposed to do with that? Just feel things and suffer?" "No. You're supposed to decide what you want. Not what's safest, not what hurts less, but what you actually want. Then you're supposed to be brave enough to try for it." Carolyn stood, patted Naomi's shoulder. "Eat the dumplings, think about it, and maybe stop running from the hard conversations." After Carolyn left, Naomi sat alone with the casserole and her thoughts. What did she want? The question should have been simple, but every answer led to more questions, more fear, more risk. She wanted Elias to have his father. That much was clear. But did she want Lucienne in her life beyond co-parenting? Did she want to try rebuilding something from the ruins of what they'd had? Part of her screamed yes. The part that remembered lazy Sunday mornings and inside jokes and the way he'd looked at her like she was magic. The part that noticed how he still took his coffee black, still ran his hand through his hair when he was thinking, still had that half smile that made her stomach flip. But the other part, the part that had spent 6 years learning to survive alone, screamed no. That part remembered the devastation of believing he'd betrayed her, the fear of being found, the certainty that she couldn't survive that kind of pain again. Her phone buzzed. Lucienne. Elias asked if he can bring his stuffed Brachiosaurus tomorrow. I said yes, but wanted to check with you first. Such a simple question. Such careful consideration of her role as Elias's primary parent. That's fine. He won't sleep without it. Good to know. Anything else I should know? Nightlight? Special blanket? Bedtime routine? Naomi found herself texting back detailed instructions. How Elias liked his pillows arranged, that he needed a glass of water by the bed, that he sometimes woke up scared and needed reassurance. She sent paragraph after paragraph, and Lucien responded to each one with questions and confirmation. Finally, thank you for trusting me with him. You're his father. You should know these things. Still, thank you. Naomi stared at the screen, Carolyn's words echoing in her head. Decide what you want. Be brave enough to try for it. She typed out a message, deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. On the third try, she hit send before she could change her mind. Can we talk? After you drop him off tomorrow. Just us. 3 dots appeared immediately. Yes. My place or yours? Neutral territory. The coffee shop on Main, 5 p.m.? See you then. Naomi set her phone down and tried to ignore the fact that her hands were shaking again. The next day crawled by. Elias was practically vibrating with excitement about his sleepover, talking non-stop about what he and Daddy would do, whether they'd build another fort, if he could stay up late. Naomi smiled and answered and tried not to let him see her anxiety. Lucien picked him up at 3:30, right on schedule. Elias hugged Naomi tight, promised to be good, and ran to the car without looking back. The casual confidence of a child who'd never been abandoned, who didn't understand that people could just disappear. Naomi watched them drive away and felt the absence like a physical wound. At 4:45, she walked to the coffee shop, a small place that catered to the handful of tourists who wandered through Seabrook looking for authentic coastal charm. She ordered tea she didn't want and sat at a corner table rehearsing what she wanted to say. Lucien arrived exactly at 5, looking as nervous as she felt. He ordered coffee, black, and joined her at the table. Hi, he said. Hi. They sat in awkward silence for a moment before both speaking at once. We need to... They stopped. Lucien gestured for her to continue. Naomi took a breath. I've been thinking about us, about what you said a few weeks ago, about broken pieces fitting together. Naomi, if I pushed too hard... You didn't, you were honest, and I haven't been. Honest, I mean. Not with you, not with myself. She wrapped her hands around her mug. The truth is I'm terrified. Of you, of this, of what happens if I let myself feel things again and it all falls apart. I'm not going to disappear. I know. Logically, I know that. But 6 years of fear doesn't go away in 3 weeks. And watching you with Elias, seeing you be exactly what he needs, it makes me remember what we had. And that scares me more than anything. Lucien's jaw was tight. Why does it scare you? Because I don't know if I can survive losing you again, losing us. The first time nearly destroyed me, and I had Elias to live for. If I let myself hope, let myself try, and it doesn't work. What if it does work? The question hung between them. I don't know how to trust that, Naomi whispered. I believed Vanessa over you. Made a choice that cost us 6 years based on 30 seconds of lies. How am I supposed to trust my own judgment after that? The same way I'm supposed to trust someone who ran instead of fighting. We both made mistakes, Naomi. Massive, life-altering mistakes. But we're still here. And we have a son who deserves better than 2 parents who can barely look at each other. We're doing okay with co-parenting. We're surviving co-parenting. There's a difference. Lucien leaned forward. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm not asking you to pretend the last 6 years didn't exist. But I am asking you to consider whether there's something here worth trying to rebuild. What if there's not? What if too much damage? Then we figure that out together. But we can't figure it out if you won't even try. Naomi looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. He was just as scared as she was, just as uncertain, but he was willing to risk it anyway. I don't know where to start, she admitted. How about dinner? Just us. No Elias, no co-parenting discussion, just 2 people who used to know each other trying to figure out if they still can. That's terrifying. Yeah, but so is living in fear for the rest of our lives. Naomi thought about Carolyn's words. Decide what you want. Be brave enough to try. Okay, she heard herself say. 1 dinner, but slow. We go slow. As slow as you need. Lucien's smile was tentative. Saturday? There's a restaurant in the next town over. Supposed to be decent. Saturday works. They sat there for another hour, talking carefully about safe topics. Elias's school progress, the weather, Lucien's work. Surface conversation that felt like learning a new language.
But underneath it, Naomi felt something shifting. Not healing, not yet, but maybe the beginning of willingness to try. When they finally parted, Lucian caught her hand briefly. "Thank you for giving this a chance." "Don't thank me yet, I'm a mess." "So am I. Maybe that's okay." Naomi walked home alone as the sun set over Seabrook, turning the ocean gold and pink. Her apartment felt emptier than ever without Elias, but it also felt different, less like a fortress and more like just a place she lived. Her phone buzzed at 8, a photo from Lucian. Elias in his pajamas, grinning at the camera, his brachiosaurus tucked under one arm. Someone wanted to say goodnight.
"We're about to read a book." Naomi smiled. "Tell him I love him, and that Mama will see him tomorrow." "Will do. He's doing great. You raised an amazing kid. We raised an amazing kid. You just missed the first 6 years, not missing any more." Saturday arrived faster than Naomi expected. She spent too long choosing what to wear. Not the worn jeans she lived in, but not anything that screamed trying too hard either. She settled on a dress she'd bought years ago and never worn, simple and blue, and tried not to think about how Lucian had once said blue was his favorite color on her. He picked her up at 7, and the awkwardness was immediate. They'd spent weeks navigating co-parenting, but this was different. This was a date, or something close to it, and neither of them knew how to act. The restaurant was small and quiet, the kind of place where locals went for anniversaries. Lucian had reserved a corner table, and Naomi appreciated the privacy even as it made everything feel more intense. "You look beautiful," Lucian said after they'd ordered. "Don't." "Don't what? Tell you the truth?" "Make this harder than it already is." "Right. Sorry." He took a sip of water. Safe topics, school, work, the weather. "The weather's fine." Riveting conversation. Despite herself, Naomi laughed. "This is ridiculous. We used to talk for hours. We used to know each other. We still know each other. We're just different versions." "So tell me about your version. 6 years worth of updates. What do I need to know?" It was an opening, and Naomi took it. She told him about Seabrook, about Carolyn and the library, about the small life she'd built that had felt safe until he'd appeared and blown it apart. She told him about Elias's milestones, first words, first steps, the time he'd insisted he was a dinosaur for 3 months straight. She told him about the hard parts too, the loneliness, the fear, the constant vigilance. Lucian listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "That you felt you had to live like that. That you were so afraid of me finding you that you built walls around everything." His voice was rough. "I know you thought you had reasons, but hearing what it was actually like, raising him alone, always looking over your shoulder, I hate that Vanessa did that to you. To us. She didn't do it alone. I chose to believe her, chose to run. Because you were hurt and scared and pregnant. I get it now. Doesn't make it okay, but I get it." "Your turn," Naomi said. 6 years of updates. Lucien told her about the company, how he'd thrown himself into work because it was the only thing that made sense, how he'd built an empire he didn't care about because the one thing he wanted was gone. He told her about the investigators, the dead ends, the nights he'd driven past their old house and couldn't bring himself to sell it. He told her about the moment he'd finally found a lead, tracked it to Seabrook, and prepared himself for the possibility that she might have moved on, married someone else, built a life without him. "When I saw Elias," Lucian said quietly, "when I heard his voice through the door, it was like everything stopped. All those years of searching, and suddenly there was this piece of you I didn't know existed. This proof that what we had was real, that it mattered. He looks like you. He has your eyes, your smile, your tendency to hide when things get hard. That's not fair. It's not a criticism. It's an observation. He's both of us, Naomi, best parts of both of us. And I look at him and I wonder who we could have been if Vanessa hadn't—" He stopped, shook his head. "Sorry, not helpful. No, it's honest. And we said we'd try honest. Honest is I'm still angry. At Vanessa, yeah. But also at you for running. And at myself for not seeing what she was doing sooner, for leaving my phone somewhere she could get it, for not being more careful. Honest is I'm still angry too. At all of it. At myself most of all." They sat with that for a moment, the mutual anger and regret creating a strange kind of understanding. The food arrived, and they ate in more comfortable silence. Somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, the conversation shifted to easier topics, books they'd read, shows they'd watched, the mundane details of life that felt monumental because they were sharing them. By dessert, Naomi realized she was actually enjoying herself, not just surviving the date, but genuinely laughing at Lucien's stories, sharing her own, falling into a rhythm that felt almost familiar. "This was nice," she said as they walked to the car. "Yeah, it was." Lucien opened her door, then hesitated. "Can we do it again?" "Maybe, if you survived this one." "Barely. You're terrifying on dates." "I'm terrifying in general." "True, but I like terrifying." The drive back to Seabrook was quiet but not uncomfortable. When Lucien pulled up to her apartment, Naomi found herself not wanting the night to end. "Elias is with Carolyn," she said. "Sleep overnight. If you wanted to, I don't know, come up for coffee?" Lucien's eyes searched hers. "Is that a good idea?" "Probably not, but I'm tired of only making safe choices." "Coffee sounds good." They climbed the stairs to her apartment, and Naomi was hyper-aware of his presence behind her, the familiar, unfamiliar weight of having him in her space. She made coffee she didn't need while Lucien stood awkwardly in her living room, looking at the life she'd built without him. "It's small," Naomi said. "It's home." It was. "I don't know what it is anymore. Everything feels different now." "Different bad or different good?" "Just different." She handed him a mug. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize this is too hard, or I'm too damaged, or Seabrook is too small." "What if the shoe doesn't drop? What if I'm exactly where I want to be?" "Then I'd be terrified, because wanting things, wanting you, didn't work out so well last time." Lucien set his mug down, moved closer. "Last time we had Vanessa sabotaging us. Last time we were younger and less careful. Last time we didn't know what losing each other felt like. And now we do, which makes trying again even scarier. Or smarter, because now we know what's at stake." He was close enough that Naomi could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell his cologne, could remember exactly what it felt like to be held by him. And she wanted it, wanted him, with an intensity that made her chest ache. "Lucien, tell me to leave and I'll leave. Tell me you're not ready and I'll wait. But don't tell me you don't feel this too." "I feel it, that's the problem. I feel too much and I don't know what to do with it. So we figure it out, together, one day at a time, just like we've been doing with Elias." "What if we screw it up again?" "Then we screw it up and deal with the consequences." "But at least we tried." Naomi looked at him. This man who'd searched for her for 6 years, who'd forgiven her for the unforgivable, who was willing to risk everything for a chance at something that might not work, and made a decision. She kissed him. It was tentative at first, testing, remembering, but Lucien responded with a hunger that matched her own, his hands coming up to frame her face like she was something precious. And for a moment, Naomi let herself forget all the reasons this was a bad idea and just felt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien rested his forehead against hers. "We're doing this?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Slowly. Slowly. I can do slowly. And if it doesn't work, then we figure out how to co-parent anyway. But Naomi, I think it's going to work. I think we can do this." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that they could rebuild something real from the ashes of what they'd lost. But 6 years of fear didn't disappear with one kiss. "Stay," she heard herself say. "Just for tonight. Nothing else. Just stay." Lucien studied her face, reading the vulnerability there. "Okay, just tonight." They sat on her couch, not touching but close, talking until the early hours of the morning, about Elias, about their pasts, about the future they might or might not build. It wasn't smooth. There were moments of anger, of grief, of painful honesty that made them both flinch. But they stayed. They talked. They tried. And when Naomi finally fell asleep, her head on Lucien's shoulder, she felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. Safe. The next few months were messy. They fought about parenting decisions, about boundaries, about how fast or slow to move. Lucien wanted more time, more commitment, more certainty. Naomi needed space to process, to heal, to learn how to trust again. But they kept trying. Elias thrived with both parents in his life, splitting time between apartments and never questioning that he was loved. He had sleepovers at Lucian's house that turned into regular weekends. He had dinners with both parents that were sometimes tense, but always ended with hugs. He had a father who showed up to school events, and a mother who was learning to share the role she'd held alone for so long. And slowly, so slowly Naomi almost didn't notice, the walls she'd built started coming down. 6 months after Lucien had found them, Naomi stood in his kitchen making breakfast while Elias and Lucien built Legos in the living room. She'd started keeping clothes at his house, had a toothbrush in his bathroom, had slowly, cautiously allowed herself to imagine a future where this was normal. "Mama," Elias called, "come see what we built." She walked into the living room and stopped. They'd constructed an elaborate city, complete with buildings and roads and tiny Lego people. And in the center was a house, bigger than the others, more detailed. "It's our house," Elias explained. "The one we're all going to live in. See? 3 bedrooms like Daddy's house, and a yard for dinosaurs." Naomi looked at Lucien, who was watching her carefully. "It's just a Lego house," Lucien said quietly, "unless you want it to be more." "Daddy asked if you might want to move in," Elias said, oblivious to the tension. "I said yes, because then we'd all be together, like a real family." "We are a real family," Naomi said, "even with 2 houses. But one house would be better, right, Daddy? That's up to your mom, buddy." Lucien's eyes never left Naomi's face. It's a big decision. It was enormous. Moving in together meant giving up her independence, her safety net, her carefully controlled distance. It meant trusting that this, whatever they were rebuilding, was solid enough to risk everything on. It meant being brave. "Can we talk about it?" Naomi asked. "Just us?" Elias groaned but accepted it, going back to his Legos while Naomi and Lucien stepped into the kitchen. "I'm not trying to rush you," Lucien said immediately. "If it's too fast, it's terrifying." "I know. But I think I want it. Not right now, but someday. When I'm ready." Lucien's smile was genuine. "Someday works. I'm not going anywhere." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true. I spent 6 years looking for you, Naomi. I'm not walking away now that I've found you, both of you." She believed him. Finally, after months of testing and pushing and waiting for him to give up, she actually believed him. "Someday soon," she said. "Not today, but soon." "I'll take it." They sealed it with a kiss, soft and full of promise, while Elias made gagging noises from the living room. A year after Lucien had knocked on her door in Seabrook, Naomi stood in a different apartment, one they'd chosen together, bigger than her old place but smaller than Lucien's house. A compromise, like everything in their life had become. Elias's room had dinosaur posters on the walls and shelves full of books and models they'd built together. The master bedroom had photos from their wedding, the original one and the small private ceremony they'd had 3 months ago when Naomi had finally been ready to say yes again. Not a do-over, not pretending the past 6 years hadn't happened, but a new beginning built on honesty and hard work and the understanding that love wasn't enough. You had to fight for it too. "You ready?" Lucien asked from the doorway, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Naomi's first car. "For what?" "The foundation launch. We're supposed to be there in an hour." "Right, the foundation." They'd started it together. Lucien's money, Naomi's vision, a nonprofit that helped women escaping dangerous situations, offering resources and support and a safe place to land. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "I'm ready," Naomi said, and meant it. The launch was small but meaningful. Local press, a few donors, families they'd already helped. Naomi gave a speech about second chances and the importance of asking for help, about how running away sometimes meant running toward something better. She didn't mention her own story, that was private, theirs alone, but everyone understood anyway. Lucien stood beside her, Elias between them, and for the first time in 7 years, Naomi felt whole. Not perfect. They still fought about stupid things, still had moments where the past hurt too much to ignore,
still struggled with trust and fear and all the damage that 6 years of separation had caused. But they were together, and they were trying. And somehow, that was enough. That night, after Elias was asleep and the foundation celebration was over, Naomi and Lucien sat on their balcony looking out at the ocean. Different ocean than the one in Seabrook, but still vast and endless and full of possibility. "Do you ever regret it?" Lucien asked quietly. "Saying yes again? Trying this?" "Every day," Naomi said honestly. "And then I remember the alternative, and I stop regretting." "What's the alternative?" "Living in fear forever, never taking the risk, keeping Elias from you because it felt safer." She took his hand. "I don't want safe anymore. I want real, even when it's hard. It's going to be hard sometimes. I know, but we'll figure it out. We always do." Lucien pulled her close, and Naomi let herself sink into the embrace. Not running, not hiding, just being present in a moment she'd never thought she'd have again. "I love you," Lucien said. "I never stopped. Even when I was angry, even when I didn't know where you were. I never stopped." "I know, I love you too. That was never the problem." "What was the problem?" "I didn't love myself enough to believe I deserved you, deserved this." She gestured to their apartment, their life, their second chance. "But I'm learning." "Good, because you deserve everything." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over the water. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, parenting disagreements, foundation crises, moments where the past came back to haunt them. But tonight was peaceful. And peace, Naomi had learned, was something you built one moment at a time. Not by running from the hard things, but by staying and fighting for what mattered. She'd lost 6 years believing a lie. But she'd gained something too. The knowledge that love wasn't just feeling, it was choice. The choice to stay, to trust, to rebuild, to be brave enough to try. And in the end, that made all the difference.